Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the NXTGEN Racing GT3 Championship as hosted using iRacing. It's Season 2, and tonight marks the final test event round of the pre-season. And as you can see on screen, we are here today in Australia, Mount Panorama Raceway, or you may colloquially know it as Bathurst, for what is expected to be a grueling test event and one that is going to push all of our drivers to the absolute limit in terms of finalising their car choices, but not only that, getting acquainted with their cars and their machinery and really putting things to the limit. I'm your host, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and tonight's broadcast is being brought to you over 3 different platforms: on the official NXTGEN Racing YouTube channel, the official NXTGEN Racing Facebook page, alternatively on the Twitch channel of my own, which is TX141 on Twitch. But enough about where you can find our media tonight. There's our race schedule there. You can see that at the hour at 8 o'clock British Summer Time or UTC +1 this evening, we'll be getting underway with the qualifying session, which is 15 minutes in length, to determine who will be on pole for the sprint race, which will commence straight after. That will be another 15-minute session, so a 15-minute sprint race from start to finish. Go, go, go. No pit stops whatsoever. Our drivers are expected to push to their utmost, and then we'll take a short break before coming back for the all-important feature race, the 60-minute race, where our drivers will start off in a reverse grid, so whoever wins the sprint race will start right at the back for the purposes of the feature race, and that will be the one with the tactical element in, with the mandatory pit stop to take on fuel, given the fact the cars will not be able to go to the end on their starting fuel capacity. But with that in mind as well, let's take a moment to just introduce our sponsors as well, without whom this would not be possible. We are in collaboration with the Apex Racing Academy and also Next Level Racing. And speaking of the Apex Racing Academy, let's introduce them. Season, and indeed they are behind us and supporting us in providing us with our prize pool, a prize pool for the season worth in the region of approximately £1,500 in total. And indeed we are very grateful to have them alongside us and working in partnership with the NXTGEN Racing team. We've also got Next Level Racing joining us as well, supporting us, and also a very big provider of sim racing gear on PC and consoles as well. And if you do want to know more about Next Level Racing, be sure to check them out on their official website. You can Google Next Level Racing for further information. But as we move away from our intro screens and start to look around the circuit right now, we can see we've got a good number of drivers out on circuit tonight. We do have the return, for example, of Billy Fletcher, indeed the British driver here, making his way right now through the very difficult chase chicane here before coming down towards the final corner. You can see he is in the Lamborghini but has jumped along there a little bit of connectivity issues there, but hopefully those will clear away shortly after, as we're just getting some brief intermittent delays there. We've also got Ben Hicks making his way right now up towards turn number 2, and we can see the British driver here in the BMW M4, and a very popular car the BMW M4 has been throughout the test session so far, and we expect that Ben will be able to put it to a good use tonight. As we say hello to Zoronic from the Twitch chat there, and I hope to all of you tuning in, whether you're going to say hi in the chat or not, or whether you're a little bit shy or you don't have access to the ability to chat on the YouTube, Facebook or Twitch platforms, I hope you're all having a good week. We're getting through the hump day right now. It is of course Wednesday, only 2 more days to go until we get to the weekend, but only a week to go now until we get underway with the official season for this GT3 Championship, and we have got a lot ahead of us. But of course, to get there we do have to get through tonight, and indeed our drivers need to use tonight to maximise their understanding of their cars and finalising their car choice. We've also got the return of Matt Acton, getting it very wrong there going into Skyline in the Ferrari, and as he comes down into the dipper he'll be looking to calm that car down as much as possible, and I believe that livery there is inspired off of the Lister racing machine. We've got the return of Colin Martin, and many of you will know Martin, a driver who we have loved to see perform over the course of the pre-season testing so far, bringing that BMW M4 once again. We've also got the Dane here of Mikael Andreasen, and we can see in the Ferrari here is not the Dane, my apologies. Yeah, indeed, the Dane making his way right now out of the chase. The Danish driver here and heading down towards turn number 23. And as he makes his way into the corner, you can just see they're smoothly going through. We've also got the return of the German driver, Jochen Siegert, and we can see running in the BMW M4 once again, and did very well last time out at the test event at Snetterton. Indeed, we'll be looking forward to seeing whether he's able to put the Jägermeister machine to good use again today. We've also got the return of Jeremy Debova here, the Belgian driver in the Porsche 911, as he makes his way here through the Forest Elbow and making his way out of the corner now in that Porsche GT3 machinery, charging all the way down the straight now, down towards the chase. And then we've got the return of Nigel Stock here, who I believe, speaking to Stock prior to getting underway tonight, what he was saying is he hopes that everybody has, I believe it was Stock who was saying that he has hoped that everybody has purchased their life insurance today, because this is a circuit which no doubt is going to scare the life out of you. And speaking of scaring the life out of you, whilst we do have some more drivers to introduce, we do have a reference lap to show you to give you an idea of what it's like driving around this circuit from the perspective of one of the drivers. All of our drivers, of course, racing in cockpit view as is mandated by iRacing. And let's jump on board for a reference lap provided by Matt Emmons, who we'll come to very shortly in the BMW M4. So as we can see here, just making his way up towards the final corner, and 23 corners at the Bathurst circuit as he goes into left-hander here, now to go on to starting the lap. Coming out the final corner then, building up speed, coming up towards 4th gear right now, and as he accelerates towards turn 1, hell corner here, turn number 1, because you're entering hell effectively as you go into each lap at this circuit, and as he comes out, they're getting a little bit of oversteer in 2nd gear, and now on the long run, up the mountain straight towards turn number 2, into the mountain corner, and you can see just gradually building up the acceleration here, building up the throttle and continuing to build up that speed up into 5th gear now, and as he comes into that braking zone for turn number 2, he's going to be sighting that 100 metre board, knowing when to brake, and then coming through the right hand here, going a little bit wide of apex, but you can afford to do that in some of the machines depending on what machine you're running, before going through the left combo of turns 3 and 4, which is going into the cutting effectively. Here's the cutting right now, a very tricky corner. You can see Emmons there going for a wide line through the corner before bringing it out into turns 5 and 6, going uphill now through the double right combination, and then flexing it back for the left-hander of 7. A very difficult run up the hill, and now as he makes his way through 8, and he's going to briefly lift off the throttle through 9 here in 4th gear, and he's going to be coming over the run to McPhillamy Park corner here, turn number 10. You've got to be so sensitive on balancing the throttle. Nicely done there by him as he comes over Skyline now into 11, 12 and 13. 11 being the right-hander, 12 being the left-hander, right-hander of 13, and now into the dipper here as he goes into turn 14 and gets it nicely balanced through 15, coming for that right-hander into 16 he goes, and then 17 and into turn 18, the braking zone, the downhill braking zone of Forest Elbow. You've got to get the rear of the car stabilised and stop the car before charging now down onto the Conrod straight, an incredibly long straight, effectively the longest of the straights of this circuit, and it's all the way down towards turns 21 and 22, which will comprise of the chase as he makes his way all the way down there. He's got turn 20 coming up here. You can see the right hander he's about to go through, and as he makes his way through turns 21, 22, here they come. Here's the chase as he comes all the way down through the gears into second gear, throwing the car in on the apex curve there of 21, and then gradually bringing it around for 22, and now just one corner awaits to complete the lap. He goes into the left-hander here. It's a very clean lap by Emmons, of course, in this reference lap, as he goes through the left-hander to complete the lap. We can see just how difficult it is around here at the Australian circuit, but a lovely lap there by Emmons, and we look forward to seeing what he is able to achieve tonight. As we come back to the live footage right now, all of our drivers getting ready, of course, and stock there in the Mercedes AMG. We've got Jean-Louis Duchamps, the Belgian driver here, getting it very wrong coming into McPhillamy Park there, and you can see that he's, as a result, had to park the car up in the Porsche. We've also got Miles Owens bringing out the Mercedes AMG. Here is the British driver as he makes his way down towards turn number 2 right now. A rather fetching livery there for the British driver, and we expect great things from him tonight as he makes his way charging down the straight up towards turn 2. We've also got Tom Porter making his way right now through the cutting in what is the Ferrari here, albeit it looks a little bit deceptive the way they've done the paint scheme, the next-gen racing paint scheme there. You'd think at first perhaps you're looking at a McLaren 720S, the way they've contoured the colours to the car, but as a result, as we see Porter making his way right now through turn number 9 and up into McPhillamy at 10 here, looking very composed as Porter, and we look forward to seeing what he can achieve here, as we've also got Mark Baker, I should say, not Matt Baker, Mark Baker here, coming out of turn 1, out of hell corner in the Porsche and charging up towards 2 right now in the rather inspired Porsche livery there, the old classic racing colours of the blue and orange, of course, charging all the way along now. And then we will shortly be having Matt Emmons arriving at the circuit from what we hear. But in the meantime, we do have the return of Matthew Addy here, as we can see Addy in the Ferrari going into turn number 2 and looking very steady as she goes there, does Mr. Addy. We've also got George Bland. He's bringing out the McLaren tonight, and we can see the McLaren here just coming out the final corner right now to complete a lap. The English driver as he heads across the timeline with only 4 minutes of the pre-practice remaining right now. This final practice session. Our drivers have had some dedicated practice sessions going into tonight, but they do get that final practice to get themselves acclimatised. And as we say hello to Katie Eames in the Facebook chat, who says the only way to drive this track is to use it like a pinball machine. That is indeed the case, or at least my personal experience. I've found I've acted as a pinball machine around Bathurst, but for these drivers I don't think they'll want to hit those walls wherever possible, but never say never. I suspect we are going to see some drivers get into a bit of difficulty and into some arrears with their cars. As we've also got going around the circuit, Arjan Bakker here, and indeed the Belgian driver as he makes his way out of Forest Elbow. Also in the Porsche, we're seeing a lot of drivers favour the Porsche. That does seem to be a very steady and comfortable car. We do seem to have a lot of drivers going for either the Porsche or the BMW M4, and then outside that it becomes a case of we've got the variety drivers who may throw a spanner in the works. Indeed, we have got Fletcher at the moment setting the fastest time in this practice session with a Lamborghini, and indeed that is a 205.761. That is everybody covered right now as we're waiting for our drivers to get finalised with only just under 3 minutes remaining. And we can see there as well Matt Emmons, who's going to be trying tonight. Indeed, he's not quite out on the circuit right now, but he has said in the Facebook chat. As you can see, he's parked there in the BMW machine, the BMW M4, bringing out once again and actually taking to the circuit right now. Good to see Emmons here, and we thank him again for that reference lap. But we'll be trying to do everything he can to keep it nice and clean tonight as everybody is getting ready to go. And some other drivers who we haven't introduced, but they are now down in the pit lane. We've got Jamie Dory, who I believe is in the Mercedes, albeit not quite heading out onto the circuit as of yet, so we are waiting for Jamie. And we've also got Jack Wyborn, who'll be bringing the Lamborghini tonight, but not currently at the circuit, or out on the circuit at least. But we do have Miles Owens right now making his way around as we jump to his car. And we can see here the Mercedes driver, of course, making his way through Forest Elbow right now, doing a very good job in the TCE livery there as he comes all the way down the Conrod Straight. And indeed, what a wonderful place where you can just open up that wonderful roar of the V8 engine, just feel full confidence. You can take a breather and get ready for the difficult corners of the Chase chicane as he charges all the way down. We can hear there that YBZ Gaming on our Twitch chat is going to be joining very shortly, so that'll be great to have, and I believe that is Jack Wyborn, who is going to be joining us very shortly. We are due to get underway in a very short period. Oh, goodness me, what on earth happened to Owens there? Well, I think Owens has had a major off. What was that? Well, here's what happens when you get it wrong, folks. He decided to vault the wall of the Chase, and well, I think... well, I hope he's all right in that cockpit. Thank goodness it's in the simulator. I would not want to have been in that vehicle in the simulator or in Real world, that would have been horrific. But Owens there giving us some theatrics before we get underway. As we see, we've got Hicks right now making his way around the circuit, coming down to Conrad as well. And I think we can definitely say that in perhaps a previous life that Miles Owens was perhaps a horse racer. In the fact he was jumping over that fence post with a lot of horsepower indeed. But a great one there. And indeed, we are waiting to go. As we can see in the chat, a lot of you did enjoy that crash, albeit for the absolute fear of what had happened, but I don't think anyone will want to see that in the race, of course. But whilst we are counting down, what are our expectations for tonight? Well, given the fact that we've got nice clear skies and also the fact we've got quite a nice track temperature here, it should be quite comfortable conditions for our drivers to drive in. But the thing is as well, around Bathurst, and the biggest consideration if I was one of these drivers, it's about driving consistently here. You can be fast, and don't get me wrong, the faster you go around Bathurst, of course, the more likely you're going to be up towards the front. But having more consistent lines is what is going to give you the best possible result here in the races. Because the thing is, you can drive a car very aggressively around here as we're about to get underway with qualifying, as all of our drivers will jump back into the pits. You can drive around here very aggressively, but the reverse side of the coin is the fact that the more aggressive you drive, the less control you potentially have over the car, and that can be something which can dent your chances. As we're about to get underway with qualifying then, the 15-minute session to see who is going to be on pole for the sprint race. And we can see there immediately Deschamps charging out of the pits. We've also got Emmons following after him right now. Everybody trying to get out as quickly as possible here to get quite a bit of lap time. And given the laps are just over 2 minutes, we are going to be looking at approximately 4 to 5 flying laps for our drivers when all is said and done. And that means that time is a premium here. And if you make one mistake over the course of lap, particularly in either sectors 2 and 3, those being the mountain sectors, then as a result you'll find that that lap time comes crashing down. We've also got additional sector lines here, so we in fact do have the best part of what is a total of 6 sectors compared to some layouts which decide to run it as 4 sectors. And we can see Deschamps leading the field away as he makes his way out of the corners here. As we say hello to Bilance in the Twitch chat as well, and I believe Bilance is going to be supporting on the Dutchman of Mikkel Andreasen from SAS Racing, who is currently waiting to get out the pits at the moment. And as we see our drivers making their way around, Deschamps still taking us around. We will hop on board with Deschamps when he goes to his flying lap. But let's just take a look at how our drivers are spacing themselves out a little bit, as we can see here that we do have Tom Porter just making his way right now all the way down towards turn 2, and everybody on a flying lap right now. It's just one of those cases whereas we just quickly reload our timing boards, so those are just going to get refreshed very shortly. We can see here that Porter just making his way up, coming through at turn number 3 right now and into the cutting. But meanwhile we take a look back to Deschamps and we can see that behind him we do have Emmons starting to stack up a little bit, not wanting to fall too far behind, and perhaps hoping he can get a little bit of a distant toe in qualifying. If he knows that he's a little bit faster than Deschamps over the course of the mountain sectors, then he can have the better run out of Forest Elbow and get a distant slipstream, which may just help him with his lap a little bit and help him gain some time. But as he makes his way then out of the chase and down towards the final corner right now, we jump on board with the Belgian driver in the Porsche here as he takes us away for his opening flying lap, and indeed the opening flying lap of the field in this qualifying session. So immediately as he's building his way up here, you'll see that the Porsche is going to be different from the reference lap we saw in the BMW M4 in the fact that it's mid-engine rear-wheel drive, so as a result the rear end will come round faster in this car because all the weight is towards the rear, so the centre of mass comes lurching forward under braking as he makes his way very nicely out of Hell Corner there, now charging up the hill towards turn number 2. And of course a little bit of an unknown here because it's the first time the tyres will have been warmed up. The track is relatively fresh right now and the rubber needs to go down with increasing qualifying laps, so he's going to be setting the pace mark here as he comes into turn number 2, coming down through the gears in third gear. Then you can see how tight a line he takes, and he has the confidence to get on the throttle because the rear end has come round fully. It's very compliant, this Porsche, as he now comes into turns 3 and 4. Into the cutting he goes here, and we'll be looking for a tight apex line as he used the full width there, coming down to first gear to give himself a nice rotation. An early upshift to second to avoid snap oversteer coming over the camber of turn 4 as he now makes his way through turn 6 and into turn 7 here. And you'll note that he's just sliding a little bit round, perhaps working out where the limits can be pushed for the next flying lap as he now comes down through the sequence of corners of turns 8, 9 and 10 here. A very tricky set of corners as he makes his way through, goes through McPhillamy there, very nicely done. The rear end almost coming loose there, but just about nailing it on the limits, and now making his way into the dipper here, and he just clips the wall and it sends the car a little bit wide, but he gets it back back under control, but he'll know immediately that's compromised what was looking to be a very strong lap as he comes into Forest Hill. And you can just see how tight it is as the rear end snaps under braking, and Deschamps has to get it under control there. This lap has gone from good to bad, but surely it's not going to become worse. It's going to stay bad or better at this point as he makes his way down the Conrod straight here, building all that speed up, of course, and that's the long run down into the chase. He's going to have to be heavy on the brakes as he makes his way all the way down up into 6th gear. Now you can hear the engine working at its maximum as he comes into the right hander before the heavy braking zone, braking at that 150 board, and as he comes down to 2nd gear here, he's throwing the rear of the car in, clambering over the apex curve of 21, and now coming out of the chase and down in towards the final corner he goes. And what's this going to be from our leader in the pack right now in terms of leading the qualifying pack around? It is going to be, as he comes out that final corner, I think it's going to be something along the lines of a 209, and he comes across the line there to set what is as he comes all the way out. Well, it's not registered on our screen right now. In fact, it is an aborted lap from Deschamps because of what happened there. And in fact, it is Colin Martin who has set the opening lap of a 208, but immediately we have had more times come in. So Deschamps there aborting the lap, and we can see that everybody bringing those times in. And it is Acton right now with the provisional pole so far with a 207.459 in the Ferrari as more and more drivers are coming around. And we can see that everybody trying to find that lap time out there right now. But we have got the best part of approximately 15 cars out on circuit, so it is a very crowded circuit right now. As we can see Andreasen coming through into the chase, into that braking zone he's going, and that Ferrari right now, as we hear Fletcher's taking provisional pole with 206.282 as the SOS inspired machine there goes down towards turn number 23, and as he comes into the left-hander here, we can see just coming carefully down the brakes. It's looking a good lap so far from the Dane, and as he makes his way out that final corner to cross the line, it is from him right now a 207.8, a good opening lap there, provisional P4, but Fletcher right now really the man in a mission and in a world of his own, over a second faster than anybody else. But we still do have plenty of laps, and many drivers right now will perhaps trip over one another over the course of their opening qualifying lap. Everybody will need to get a feel for what the other drivers around them are like in terms of qualifying laps, because they're close to a slower driver going up the mountain and coming down the mountain. It may compromise them a bit over the lap time, but Fletcher definitely the man on fire right now, as we're hearing that Baker is on a charger. And as he comes across the line there, that looks to be what is a 208.648 there, and that is P8 as it currently stands provisional, as we hear Stock is returning to the circuit right now. He's jumped to the pits and coming back on out as we see Baker in the Porsche behind him, the Lamborghini, and I do believe that is the Lamborghini behind him of Wyborn. But meanwhile, we do have Sykes right now. Mark Sykes, of course, the English driver we have seen time and time again in these test events, and as he makes his way down to the Conrad straight here, you can see in the Lamborghini, he wanted to test this car out from what I gathered over the course of the final test event tonight, was a little bit curious as to how it would handle and how it would feel in his capable hands. We've seen that he's practiced around with a lot of mid-engine rear-wheel drive GT3 cars over the course of the test events, and this is another example here. I think Sykes really feeling as though he wants that mid-engine rear-wheel drive car. It probably has the better rotation for his driving style as he comes into the chicane here. And you can see just very composed there, making his way through turns 21 and 22. Now coming down to that line, as we are hearing Fletcher is going to be coming across the timing line soon, and indeed he is on a very fast lap right now, is Billy, as you can see him in the rear of your camera there. But focusing on Sykes right now, this is looking to be a good lap as he comes across, and it is going to be from Sykes in the end well, it's not recorded right now on our screen, so I think that might have actually been an out lap as Fletcher improves to a 205.472. I mean, he is raising the bar and then some is Fletcher. This is phenomenal, as we see right now Acton in that provisional P2 1.6 seconds down, and can anybody get within a second of Fletcher? That is the big question here as we look further down our order, and we can see I think Wyborn has had a major mistake somewhere because he's in the wall there. And in fact, that looks to be in the wall at what is approximately the dipper or around that space as he's trying to get the car corrected. He's got it corrected right now, but this is not good news for the British driver. And as he makes his way back, he's been able to get the car recovered there before another driver was able to come through. And that's Emmons who was just coming through the sector right there. So I think Emmons will be breathing a sigh of relief that he was able to get into that sector without a major hindrance. And he's actually going to benefit from this by getting a distant toe off the Lamborghini in front of it. So Wyborn giving his fellow countrymen a bit of an advantage there. as you can see, Wyvern having a bit of difficulty, but moving out the way now, very peacefully moving out the way down the Conrod Straight. And as we stay with Emmons right now, who is currently on a 2:10.3. Well, there's plenty of lap time there for Emmons. We know that he can get himself into the 209s and the 208s, and this is looking to be a bit of a difficult lap again for the British driver as he comes through the chase, and he's going to be making his way down towards turn 23 in very short order right now. And as he comes down into that heavy braking zone, of course, here, coming all the way down. I don't think this is going to be close enough to compete for the front row right now, but as he comes across that timeline, it is going to be what is an improvement, I believe. It is an improvement indeed to a 208.1, so definitely jumping up into provisional P7 right now, as we can see Hicks, another BMW M4 driver here with half the qualifying session remaining, or just under half, making his way through the left-hander here to complete a lap, but this isn't looking a good lap from Hicks right now. It's not an improvement, as to understand. Indeed, Hicks not improving from that 207.4 that he set earlier on in this qualifying session. As we look a little bit further down, we've got Bland here. He's just come across the line, having completed that and improved to a 209.021 as the rear end snaps and Bland gets it wrong on the exit curb there of turn 1. Hell corner, claiming a victim and causing him to descend into the lower depths of hell as he gets himself onto the grass and now needs to find a way to recover. Well, he's jumped back to the pits, and as a result, he'll be looking to go racing again very shortly for that qualifying lap in short order. As we see Miles Owens right now making his way down towards turn number 2 is the British driver here, and currently in a provisional P8 with what is a 208.3. As we can see at the bottom of the time screens, nobody really making major improvements right now in this qualifying session, at least the 4 that we've got on screen. But as he makes his way into the corners, we can see that out on circuit, everybody really trying to find the space and just get themselves set up and ready to go for their final qualifying laps. They'll have 2 qualifying laps approximately from this point onwards, if they are able to get themselves out on circuit and get in that opening lap if they're coming from the pits, either the out lap or the warm-up lap. But staying with Owens right now, a very nice flying line there through turns 9 and into 10, into McPhillamy, and you can see feels very comfortable in that Mercedes. And what I'm hearing down the paddock is the Mercedes is a very stable car typically, and we can see that with Owens just having a really good flow through the dipper there and just being able to keep it together. Of course, the rear end not coming around as quickly as say the Ferraris or the McLarens or the Porsches because of the fact it's front engine rear wheel drive, but it's made up for in the fact that it's so stable and smooth. And also, who would not want to be driving that Mercedes with that brutal V8 engine as he charges down the Conrod Straight once again? And we can see there is indeed the case that Owens right now just pushing on, I think trying to find a little bit of improvement. He is slightly up on his previous best as it currently stands, albeit it's a real push for Owens as he makes his way down. As we hear that Emmons right now improves to a 207.9. Indeed, the British driver now up into provisional P6 in the BMW M4, as we're hearing that Bakker is making his way around on the circuit, and Bakker coming out the final corner here, and I think this is his first proper flying lap, and this is going to be from the Belgian driver here. It is a 213.8, placing him on the bottom of the grid right now. As we see, we come back to Owens here crossing the line, and what is it from the British driver? It is a case it's not an improvement, so he's got to go again. And he's currently provisional P8, of course, as we look further around. Now we hear that Stock has just improved considerably. In fact, Stock, another Mercedes AMG driver here, improving to a 208.1. So a good improvement there by Stock, and literally competing with Owens for the full throw of that grid. Owens just being deposed from P8 by Stock, as we can see that Bova has improved to a 208.4 as well, and that will place him up into what is provisional P12 right now. Indeed, Jeremy, the Belgian driver here, making his way up towards turn 2 once again in that Porsche. And indeed, I think right now it's a case of who is going to be in P2 and further back, because look how tight it is on that time screen, literally from P2 all the way down to approximately P14. It's only approximately a 2-second window from that point onwards, and then we just got that huge gap as we see Sigurd here, Jochen, improving to a 207.8, putting him into provisional P6 with only 2.5 minutes of this qualifying session to go right now. So as a result, all of our drivers really finding the time as the rubber's being laid down on the circuit, and indeed the tyre temperatures are coming up, and the circuit temperature is gradually coming up as well with the tyre wear of our drivers and going around on the circuit. And this is critical, as we are hearing that our drivers are all trying to push as much as possible, so much so that I think Colin Martin has just had a small off. So indeed, going into turn 1 here, I think it's going to be a case he goes a little bit wide there, just pushing the limits of turn 1 and avoiding that wall just about there. And Colin Martin right now, to give you an idea, down in provisional P8 on a 208.05, and that is only 700ths off of P7. That's how tight it is in this qualifying order, as we hear that Bakker is improving right now, and he's going through the chase, but he's got it a little bit wrong there, and that's going to be an aborted lap immediately. That's a disaster for the Porsche driver. He is going to have one more lap around the circuit, but I do have to wonder whether he's going to be able to improve, as we see that Deschamps, by comparison, well, he wasn't able to improve on this lap, as Bakker comes across the line, having not improved, of course, with that compromised lap at the end. And Deschamps now going on to his final qualifying lap, as we are hearing that Addy making his way right now down towards the chicane, and you can see here he's up in 4 out of 5 sectors right now. This is looking good from the Ferrari driver, as he goes a little bit deep there. And he gets it very wrong and immediately decides to lift off the brakes to prevent the brakes from locking, and he will have one more lap, of course. So everybody just trying to push it now to the utmost. But I think for Fletcher, who's just parked in the pits, he'll feel comfortable that he does not need to go again, as we see that Hicks now onto his final lap as well, going through turn 2 right now. Everybody trying to get that final lap in, as Bland is making his way around the circuit. Bland, of course, currently down in P13. He's moved up to P12 with a 208.4, and to give you an idea, this is the English driver right now in that McLaren, of course, who we saw earlier having that off out of turn 1 here. That rear end just being a little bit unstable on those raised curbs, and indeed coming through the hell corner, but he is doing a good job of keeping it together now. And Bland only 7 thousandths off of P11. He's chasing after Baker, of course. Will he be able to catch up to Baker? We will wait and see in terms of this qualifying session, with everybody now going on to their final laps. A good number of drivers, though, have jumped into the pits already, and I think as a result of that, unless there is a surprise from anybody, we have got Fletcher going to be on pole. And well, we will wait and see, of course, because we still do have the best part out of our 16 drivers. We have 4 of them currently making their way around the circuit, and I think as well for a number of drivers, even if they're not improving right now, although we stay with Addy as he makes his way through turn number 9 here and up into McPhillamy Park. Turn 10 coming up, as we can see just a little bit of heat haze there coming over turn 10, over the hill into turn 10. We can see that Addy improving out of our 4 remaining drivers on the circuit, and whilst we don't have many, they'll be wanting to get that track time in just to see where they can push the boundaries. Though Addy losing out in sector 3 a little bit there, but he's definitely improving in sectors 1 and 2 right now, and he knows, I think, that he's got some pace out there, as he gets it a little bit wrong over the course of sector 4, and as a result down once again. But we'll see how he improves, as he's got the toe of Colin Martin ahead of him. In fact, he's got himself well placed here down Conrad to get a distant toe. It won't pull him too close to the back of the M4, but it will give him a little bit of a speed advantage as he goes all the way charging down. And as he makes his way into the right-hander of turn 20 before 21 and 22, you can see here it is an improvement from Addy in sector 5. Will he be able to nail it? Will he be able to get himself off of row number 7 on that grid, as he makes his way then through the chase, and now coming up towards the final corner he goes. It's going to be one more corner, and whether he can get himself out of P14, and it's into left-hander he goes. Then is this going to be an improvement from the Ferrari driver as he comes all the way round? We can see up ahead of him, Colin Martin does improve to a 207.2, and Addy improves to a 208.4. Martin up to P3, Addy up to P12, and as everybody is now coming to the end, we've got Sigurd coming around right now. He is the last of our drivers completing the lap as it currently stands, and will the German driver here be able to move the Jägermeister machine further up the order? Well, we'll wait and see as he comes out of the final corner here to complete the lap. Is it an improvement? It is going to be not a well, it is a case of improvement. It's a 207.8 in the end, but pole position going to Billy Fletcher in the end with a 205.4, a phenomenal lap there. And now we await to get underway with the sprint race, of course. But well done to all our drivers, and you can see there from P2 all the way down to P15, the gap between all of our drivers, effectively only the best part of a 3-second window, if that. And if you remove P15 from the mix for Porter there, then you end up with a window that's no greater than 2 seconds. That's how tight it has been from second all the way down to P14. A phenomenally close set of drivers. As we wait to get underway then with the race, we should be getting all of our drivers to line up very shortly for you. We will be right back. And as we return, ladies and gentlemen, you can see all our drivers now getting ready to get underway with the race as they are all making their way into the short formation lap here. As we reload our timing screens here, you can see that we do have the following grid going into the sprint race. You can see on pole there, Billy Fletcher from Luxim24 Esports were 205.472, the best part of 1.7 seconds clear of the rest of the field. P2 going to Matt Acton from TCE, followed by Colin Martin and Ben Hicks line up on the second row. Deschamps and Andreessen line up on that third row there. When we've got Sigurd and Emmons in P8, it's Nigel Stock and Owens in P9 and P10, and then on our sixth row, we've got Baker and Addy. That's our top 6 rows, of course, on the grid as we are looking to get underway with the race right now. And with that track temperature being 23 degrees centigrade and 54 degrees humidity right now, everybody's going to be feeling it in the cockpit as the pace car takes us away and all of our drivers get ready to go racing. We've got an 18 car grid right now. We can see that Wyborn is at the back of the grid there alongside Mark Sykes, but looking at back up for our order right now. The question, of course, will be for Fletcher. Can he nail the start, or can Acton find a way to spoil the pace that Fletcher seems to have and get in the way as they make their way underway in the green flags? Everybody right now making their way down towards turn 23. The final corner, of course, is the safety car. Will peel away there. See, rather aggressively peeling out the way, and it'll be for Fletcher to get us underway with the sprint race. 15 minutes. Who's going to be the winner? As it's lights down, away we go. We can see Fletcher deciding to go nice and early there and almost caught, well, in fact, he caught Acton off guard by so much that Colin Martin already up the inside into P2 before they've even got into turn 1. And you can see as Acton tries to find his way round here, looking a little bit further back. It's still side by side between Acton and Martin. Acton getting the better run out of turn 2, and he's in the slipstream of Fletcher. So Acton being able to get himself back up the order there. As we see, there's a little bit of a coming together at the rear of the field, but they all charge up towards turn number 2 right now as Fletcher is just pulling away. And then Acton under a lot of pressure here. As we see further back, we've got Seeger under attack. Well, he's on the attack, we should say, versus Andreessen as they come through turn number 2, and the Dane falling back a little bit here, but keeping it steady. 9. There's a lot more to this race than the opening lap as they all make their way now up into the cutting. You can see all drivers pushing through, but they're also coming down. Oh, goodness me, Seeger getting it very, very wrong there on the entry into turn 3, and as a result, the rear of the car coming loose, but it's very difficult to overtake here as we see Stock in P8. He's just pushing around right now, gaining 1 place on the opening lap as we are hearing that some drivers will. Miles Owens has jumped to the pits. I'm not sure what's happened to Owens, but a lot of drivers have had a disastrous start to the race as we look a little bit further back down the order, and we can see that right now everybody's starting to form up into a line in terms of going around the mountain. That's the only way to do it, as we know that Baker, they're jumping through Mavillamy, getting it very wrong. Baker going into the wall through Mavillamy. Oh, goodness me. Oh, my good Lord. That was absolutely horrific as we can see that Baker and Debova coming together there, and as he made his way from Mavillamy here, I don't think the yellow flags have got out in time, as we can see Debova literally had nowhere to go. Oh, goodness me, as I hope they're alright. As you can see that meanwhile we come back to live pictures, so many people coming into the concertina there, into Skyline, but meanwhile up front Fletcher just running away with things, and Acton, well, you can see the gap has opened up to 2.5 seconds, but we have had a number of incidents as we hear that Emmons has also had a major crash as well. So this was Emmons only moments ago going into the dipper here as he's coming through the corner. Does the car just come loose? It doesn't. Need the rear snaps and he's into the wall. Oh, he just pushed the limits a little bit too much on the open lap and has jumped back to the pit. But after 1 lap, it is Fletcher leading by 3 seconds ahead of Acton, followed by Martin. And then we've got Hicks behind him in P4, followed by Deschamps in P5 and a comfortable P5. As it's then Seeger looking for the attack onto Deschamps in P6. Then we've got Andreessen in P7 right now. Then Addy in P8, who's the best of the rest in terms of this second pack right now as they make their way across. Then you've got Bland behind in P9, followed by Sykes in P10, having gained a lot of places. He gained 8 places on the opening lap, has Sykes. As behind them you've got Stock, followed by Porter in P12. Then we've got Backer in P13, followed by Wyborn in P14, who's just making his way comfortably around right now. He had an incident on the opening lap, but keeping it together. And then you've got Debova all the way down in P15 after that incident, trying to get it into the pits right now. As we come back up the order here and look at the battling that's going on, well, not necessarily for our race lead, but definitely the battling further down the order. But as everybody's now coming up into the mountain, of course, that's where the battling will calm down, and all of our drivers will just look to try and keep it as cool as possible, as cool as ice, and try to avoid making any mistakes, trying to keep it safe, which was the #1 thing that Emmons was trying to say in the Facebook Twitch chat the Facebook chat to Mark Sykes before getting underway, just trying to keep it safe, but that did not quite work out for Evans as he grazed the wall there, as we can see that Sigurd and Andreasen are going, well, that is Sigurd versus Deschamps, in fact, and there's contact between the pair of them now. I'm not sure what happened there, but it was the case that both drivers coming together here, and as a result, as they get racing once again, the one driver who's gained from this, of course, is Andreasen, as he comes now down towards Forest Elbow here, but Deschamps versus Sigurd, that was a very odd incident. I've not seen anything like that before. Let's just take a look back at what happened from Sigurd's perspective here, as that was a very odd coming together. In fact, we'll have a look very shortly as these two right now are battling their way down the Conrad Straight here, giving one another plenty of room, and I think there might be a little bit of foul tempers here between the pair of them after what happened further on the lap, but they kept the cars going. But there's damage definitely to Deschamps' car. You can see the damage on the car, whereas with Sigurd's car a little bit less, but they're carrying on. They're going to continue this battle, and credit to them for doing so as they make their way down into the chase then on lap number 2, and it has been one of those cases where I think for both drivers they've been caught unawares of one another's presence. But let's take a look back at what happened. So as they're making their way then coming out of McPhillamy, you can see that Sigurd has a huge overspeed into the corner, and then just as they're going in, it's 2 into 1 at Skyline. Oh, and I think that's going to be a very difficult one for the stewards to take a look at, in all honesty, because you're going to push the blame both ways, but the stewards will be able to have a look at that one as we look back to live action right now. You can see going into lap number 3, we've got Hicks versus Martin here. The two BMW drivers battling for P3, and Martin at the front of your picture, of course, as we see behind, we've got Hicks chasing after as Martin goes a bit deep out too, and now they're going to be side by side into 3, but Martin has the inside line, and surely Hicks will back out. He does indeed, and as a result of that, as they go into the cut-in right now, it just cools his jets down and gets ready to attack again down the Conrad Straight if he can stay close. But I'm hearing in my ear that Baker has had a little bit of an incident. Mark Baker, let's see what happened down in P17. So here the rear just letting go there coming out of turn number 9, and it has not been a good day for Baker, who has jumped to the pits here. He's had another incident, but as a result he has jumped to the pits, and they're going to be looking to do some repair work on that car if they can. But right now, looking a bit further down the order, I can tell you that Bland is chasing after Addy right now. He is within 3/10 of the Ferrari driver ahead, as we see Sykes, they're almost going into the wall and getting it fatal through turn 9 as they make their way through McPhillamy here, and it is the case that Sykes just pushing a little bit beyond perhaps the limits of what the Lamborghini's comfortable with right now. He will be looking to get attacking on Bland in short order as they make their way right now through the Dipper and in towards Forest Elbow here, and everybody just now starting to settle down a little bit, although it has been a tumultuous opening couple of laps, and indeed we still do have over half of this opening sprint race to go here, and it's anyone's guesses as to who is going to make it home with no damage to the car or minor grazes versus who is going to be needing to replace the whole front suspension come the end of it. But meanwhile, in that battle for P7, we can see, or P6, Sigurd at the front of the picture, meanwhile Deschamps behind. Of course, these two had that incident at Skyline. I think they've both put it behind one another, but looking away from that for the time being, it's going to be Bland and Addy coming together here down into the chase, and Addy going around the outside, and as a result, Bland just taking the position up the inside. A brilliant move there by the McLaren driver, a classic move into the chicane, and he's doing a very good job, although Addy trying to come back in right now, and you can see Bland positioning himself slightly off centre of the course there, in as he goes a bit wide out the corner, he's into the wall, and that's a disaster for Bland. It was looking very good, but one driver now who's going to try and capitalise on it is Sykes, or can he, as he's not close enough to get the overlap into Hell Corner versus Addy as they make their way out the corner then and charge up the mountain once again. But you can definitely see Bland behind right now with the damage to the car, struggling a little bit, and I think he's just going to try and cool it down and keep the car together as stock is getting ever closer to the back right now, and looking to go attacking is Stock. Can he find a way to attack into turn 2? Well, the Mercedes AMG, I don't think he will be able to. He'll look to do it a little bit later on, as I am hearing that there has been a change of position for P6. But before we come to that, it's Sykes versus Addy up into turn 3 here. Not a place to try and go around the outside unless you're feeling incredibly brave and you trust the driver on the inside, but it's the case Sykes backs out of it once again, and knowing just to keep the pressure on Addy, he'll get it eventually. But meanwhile, there has been a change for P6. This is how it went down. So we can see that Sigurd getting it wrong coming out of the exit of turn 2, riding high on the curb, and he had to back out there as Deschamps had the inside into turn 3, and that's the way to it. The Belgian driver now up the position. as they make their way around and continue to do so. We're back with the live pictures. We're now at the halfway point of the race, and we can see here that we do have Sykes in that position. He's trying to attack Addy, but we do have Bland coming up very quickly right now. Is the English driver. He's the McLaren at the rear of the group. As we look back from Addy's car right now, you're going to ride from the gearbox of his machine very shortly. And as we look back here as they come out of Forest Elbow, you see that Sykes getting it a little bit too deep. They're coming out of Forest Elbow, and as a result, Addy able to pull away initially, but as they build up the speed right now, you can imagine that it will be one of those situations whereby Addy will be grateful for the advantage he does have. As we jump back to the TV camera, and you can see how now it's the case that Sykes, as they get into those top gears, the Lamborghini able to catch up with its straight line speed advantage versus the Ferrari, and he's looking for the move, is Sykes, but you can see Bland also going quite aggressive on the brakes. In fact, Sykes getting caught a little bit on the braking zone. They're just not having the confidence to brake as deep as perhaps the other cars around him, and you can see that Bland going for the move. He's going to be on the outside for the final corner here as they make their way into left-hander. Who's going to come out on top? Well, Bland will be aware of the fact he's going to go a little bit deep again. He gets it wrong, and as a result, he's gone deep and dropped the position, and Stock now in a prime position to attack Sykes, who goes defensive into Hell Corner, and you can see Stock on the outside here in the MG. He's going to go for the cutback, but Sykes parks it there and says, no way, Jose, as they make their way out of the corner and charge all the way down towards turn 2, and this is some fantastic racing, and Sykes really coming alive in the Lamborghini here, just showing that he has that balance of overall performance in the car, and I think it's going to be the case that Stock right now will have the slipstream here, but not enough in terms of legwork in order to get past the Lamborghini into turn 2. If he's going to do it, it's going to be a Conrod now. But meanwhile, further up front, I can tell you that Acton, having made a little bit of a breakaway early on in P2, has now been reeled in by our P3 and P4 drives. That's Colin Martin behind him, and you can see a little bit further back, we've got Hicks only 1.1 seconds back. But focusing on the action here, our P2 man of Matt Acton at the front of your camera, he's going around the back of the camera now, and then we've got Colin Martin right behind him, and Colin Martin really trying to find a way into this. As we hear, Devova has made the pass on Wyborn, coming across the start-finish line. Wyborn having another mistake somewhere out on circuit, but as they make their way out for Forest Elbow here, focusing on the battle for P2, you can see there that Acton and Martin taking different lines through Forest Elbow, and both of them keeping it relatively safe. But as they make their way charging down towards the chase right now, who's it going to be out of these two who gains an advantage here? Well, I think it is going to be Colin Martin. He's going to have the speed here, but will he dare go around the outside? As we can see, he looks to the inside instead. It's a case of Acton declaring his position, but Acton doing enough to defend for the time being, as Martin has to go another lap to try and find a way through. But I think at this point as well, we know that with Martin, when he's in these positions where he's not really got too many more places to gain, he'll like to play with the driver in front in terms of assess where they're strong, where they're weak, where they're going to defend, where they're going to position the car. And it's all good information which we know that Martin really processes well, and Acton will be aware of that as well. He'll know that Martin is sizing him up for a move on the next couple of laps, because we've only got now 4 minutes to go. That's effectively approximately 2 to 3 laps for our drivers as they make their way onto another lap. They're going, these three in particular, they're going onto lap number 6 right now, and they will continue the fight. And we can see that Acton being reeled in once again. Martin getting ever closer with the toe up the mountain straight here, but Acton goes defensive to the inside. Can Colin Martin go all the way round as Hicks watches on from behind as they try to go through the right-hander? It's going to be side by side, but Martin goes a bit deep and he clips the curb there, not at the right angle, and Hicks now up into P3, or is he? Well, I think he's got it done here into turn 3, goes into the cutting, and Hicks has gained the position, but Colin Martin will be looking for a way back versus Ben as they make the way through the right-hander here, the combination of 5 and 6, but Acton being given a brief relax of the pressure right now. As we can see, he makes his way ahead, the Ferrari driver does, of the two BMWs that would love to take the position off of him. Meanwhile, further back, I can tell you that Bland in P9 right now chasing after Addy. What the fact, I think Sykes has had an off somewhere, or had a major off. He's jumped back to the pits as Sykes. I'm not 100% sure what has happened to him. We are trying to find out a little bit of information right now, and I think it is the case that Sykes had an off, and here it is. Oh my good lord, what on earth happened there to Sykes? That was contact between himself and what appeared to be Stock going into McPhillamy, and that has led to what's happened. We need to see what the full replay of that, but focus on the here and now. Bland getting it wrong, oh my good lord, and it is the case that Bland just having a horrific time for McPhillamy, and so many drivers here making mistakes around the Australian circuit, and indeed I think it's a case of survival of the fittest at this point at the time, as we can see our battle for P2 has spaced out a little bit, as we've got Acton making his way through the chase right now, but you can see under braking, Hicks and Martin just have slightly stronger brake inputs, and as a result of that, they're able to catch up just a little bit here as they make their way down towards the final corner once again. With only 2 minutes remaining right now, Stock has just left the pits, and he's all the way down in what is P14, and this is the closest battle out on circuit with everything considered. As we are hearing from Sykes in the Facebook chat, he feels that the incident between himself and I assume that was Stock there was his mistake, and as a result that will press on. Of course, I think all of our drivers will have that mutual respect for one another, but as we focus on the battling for P2 right now, we can see that Acton just in a comfortable gap. He's got 7 tenths of a gap, and it will come down gradually as they make their way into turn 2, but this is where Acton will want the gap to be. He won't want it to get any lower. And then about 5 tenths of a second, if it gets any closer, then it could be disastrous in terms of those BMWs having the legs on the straights. I do have to excuse me for a brief second, so take a sip of water because this has been absolutely phenomenal racing from our drivers so far. As we can see, they all make their way now through the double right-hander of 5 and 6 here, and behind we do have Colin Martin, of course, in that P4 position, looking for a way to try and get back at Hicks. He'll want to be on the podium, at least will Martin, because he does love to put on a good performance, and we can see as they make their way through McPhillamy, these three are just inseparable. And to give you an idea, folks, their best lap so far, from Acton it's been a 207.2, from Hicks it's been a 207.2, and from Martin it's been a 207.1. These three very close on pace, and in 2 different machines entirely. It's great to see, of course, as we take a very brief look further back, and we can see that Sigurd here, Jochen, the German driver, making his way down into the dipper right now, and he's got Deschamps ahead of him. These two have already come to blows once or twice, and he'll be looking to chase after the Belgian driver going on to their final lap. Well, I think they are on their final lap, and this is going to be the last one, although we will wait and see, as Fletcher right now making his way out of the chase, and he's going to go past the back marker here of who is, as we take a look at our screen, it is Wyborn there, and as a result he'll be going on to one final lap, will be Fletcher, and our drivers will follow suit. As we can see, Acton still holding on for the time being, as George Bland has returned to the circuit in P12. He's just come out the pit lane, so one more lap for our race leaders right now as they come out of the final corner to go on to that lap, and as they make their way across the line, then they're going to be getting in one more, and who is going to hold on out of these three for that P2 position? Well, as they all make their way through then, and they press up the hill, we will wait and find out. As we see further back, some drivers already being waved across the line. We do have Andreasen here in P5 gradually catching up to the battle for P2, but there is a sizable gap between our P5 man and the battle for P2, and I think it will be the case right now that Andreasen will be just looking on and keeping these laps as constant as possible in case the guys ahead of him do battle quite heavily and perhaps take each other out right at the end of this race, as they all make their way then into the cutting for the 8th and final time of asking in this sprint race. And you can see, oh my good lord, is that Colin Martin install? It is indeed. Colin Martin just overstepping it and jumping to the pits. So that is Andreasen up into P4 with Martin getting it wrong. And we look back at our P2 driver right now. We can see Acton holding on right now as Colin Martin has fallen away from this battle and had to go back to the pits. So he has jumped all the way back to P13 effectively, as everybody's still trying to get to the end out of our remaining drivers. And they come into the dipper once more, and Acton, he's got that nice gap. Of course, he can open the gap up here through this sector, given the fact the Ferrari has the better rotation on the rear end by comparison with the BMW. And now as they make their way through Forest Hill, he's got to nail this, because this is where, out of nowhere, Hicks will start to gain the time, of course. But you can see he's done more than enough, Acton, this time. Unless he has a mistake under braking out into the chase, I think he's going to be very safe and soundly home. But meanwhile, up front, making his way through the chicane for the final time. He's led this one from start to finish, having had a dominant display in qualifying, and he's continued that form into the race. It's going to be Billy Fletcher from the United Kingdom who, as he comes out of the final corner, will take the checkered flag in the sprint race. Congratulations to Fletcher for a fantastic opener for tonight. He crosses the line there, also with the fastest lap of the race, a 2:05.668, and in the end it will be Matt Acton who holds on from the United Kingdom to P2 ahead of Hicks. Hicks coming home in P3. He'll be be pleased with that podium. And then it is Andreessen here who comes out of the final corner to take home the P4 for SAS Racing. And then behind him, it's going to be Seeger, who just overtook Deschamps only moments ago from what we're hearing as they make their way out the final corner. It'll be Seeger who comes home in P5 just ahead of Deschamps, but these two I think are going to be very close to one another over the course of the feature race. And then in P7, well, what about that? Addy will be pleased with this one. He's been able to bring it home in P7. It was a very eventful race for Addy, and we could see that on the car, but a good result nonetheless for Matthew Addy as he comes across the line. And then Tom Porter in P8 in the Ferrari, as well as we've got De Boven out making his way around the circuit here, and a very heavily wounded Porsche, but he'll be coming home in P9 of all things as they currently are as he makes his way down the Conrod Straight. As he makes his way all the way down right now, it has been one of those situations where I think for a good number of drivers, again, racing at Bathurst requires you not only to have a good feel of the circuit, but also to know what the drivers around you are going to do. I think a number of drivers perhaps just getting a little bit adventurous with the fact that this is the test race and they're trying to push the limits, but of course in the feature race they will calm things down a little bit more, although we did see some fantastic battling around here as our driver here of Devova comes into the final corner then to bring home a P9, and he'll be thinking of ways to improve going into that feature race. He'll be starting in the midfield as he crosses the line here to complete his sprint race. And then last but not least, it will be Bland who brings it home in P10, i.e. our top 10 drivers here, as he comes down to the final corner. The McLaren driver having a good innings, albeit just needs to keep it a little bit more consistent. He'll be thinking right now to come home with higher positions, but he knows the pace is there as he finishes off our top 10 for this race. Wyborn finishing in P11, a lap down, Stock in P12, Martin, Colin Martin P13, Emmons, Backer, Sykes, Baker, Owens and Dory rounding off our grid order, our finishing order I should say, as we will be right back in approximately 15 minutes for race number 2. That will be the feature race. But we can see that our race results before we take a step away with Fletcher there in P1 with a phenomenal race. And indeed, can anybody hand down Fletcher? We will have to wait and see in short order. But we will be back, as we say, at 9 o'clock British Summer Time, UTC +1 for the feature race. Until then, take it easy and come back very shortly. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back for the feature race. I hope you've all had a pleasant break as we're just waiting for our drivers to return to the circuit right now. They're all down in the paddock cooling their jets after what was a very difficult race number one, as we're just looking around the circuit at the moment and waiting to see what cars, if anybody, has switched their cars. But otherwise we're expecting everybody to come back out onto the circuit in the same vehicles that they left it in, albeit perhaps with some repair work done to the car, and then it will be go 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 with only a minute remaining before we get underway with that feature race. So this is that final little bit of practice for some drivers should they need it, but otherwise everybody now just clocking in and counting down the time. As we can see that we do have a number of drivers here who have yet to rejoin, but they may have only wanted to take part in the sprint race and use that as the test information. But everyone has been encouraged very strongly to participate in the feature race as well. What is the feature race, you may ask? Well, 60 minutes. We have the strategic element. There is a mandatory pit stop, and our drivers have to take on fuel in that pit stop. Whether they change tyres or not, that's entirely up to them. But it is going to be one of those situations whereby our drivers will need to finalise their strategies very quickly if they haven't already, and with it being a reverse grid as well, it's going to be a very challenging one for our race winner last time out, Fletcher, to make his way through the field, that being Billy Fletcher of course, and a good number of our drivers to try and siphon their way through the field and get into a position where they feel comfortable that they'll be able to then run their strategy properly, as we see everybody now coming to the end of the practice session here as we just get the count overflow here. Once everybody has completed, they'll be hopping around to commence. So right now we are just waiting for our grid to start lining up, and our grid for you, as you can see here, will have Mark Baker on pole this time. Alongside him will be Jamie Dory, the Audi driver. And then we're going to have then we're going to have George Bland in at P3, and alongside him it will be Jochen Siegert, although I think these numbers may be a little bit inaccurate given the fact we are waiting for grid members to pop on, although everybody is lined up now, so they are starting to become a little bit more accurate. But we've got Sykes there in P3 by looks of things according to our screen, so that is not meant to be George Bland there. We do have a small glitch on our screen, so we are going to just focus on what we can see in front of us rather than worrying about what our incorrect display is giving you. But what I can tell you, it is Dory and Baker lining up on the front row, and if Dory does not arrive here, it will be Baker who leads us away. Then it will be Sykes in a P3, Emmons in P4, and behind him will be Stock in P5. Then we've got Wyborn in P6 in the Lamborghini as we're getting this gridding process underway and the rolling start is about to commence. Bland in P7, DeBover in P8 with the repaired Porsche, as everybody's about to kick off indeed. Dory not able to join us, so it will be Baker and Sykes who lead us off on that front row. As we see a little bit further back right now, we do have Addy, and all the way down at the very back of the field, we have Alex Everett there, who has joined us for this one, and alongside of it is Billy Fletcher. But right now, as they take us underway, it is going to be Baker and Sykes who make their way out of the chase and then come around to start the race. And of course, this race 60 minutes in length, and everybody will be a go once that pace car moves out of the way. Once the safety car has cleared, there it goes. It's down to Baker to lead us away for the feature race. 60 minutes. Who's going to be our winner? Let's find out. And as the green flag goes there, you can see that Baker getting caught out just a little bit on the start, and immediately Emmons going on the attack behind him as Sykes is defended to the inside here. We've got 4 wide almost into turn 1, but everyone calming it down a little bit. Although, oh goodness me, Emmons being clipped then by Stock, and immediately everybody having to take evasive action. And the one driver who, by just being on the virtue of being on the inside, was able to get away from that was Sykes, and Sykes holds on to that P2 in the end. But I think Emmons is going to be kicking himself that tiny little bit of contact between himself and Stock, which has dropped him all the way down the order. order, as we can see that we've got Bland battling with Addy. Addy on the inside right now up into P3 as they make their way to turn 2 here, and further back we've got Andreasen with the inside of his Porter as he goes the long way round. As Andreasen, the Danish driver here, as he makes his way, and he's got the places up into P6 as they press their way up the hill now into turn 4. Into the cut-in they go for the first time of asking, as Porter under pressure from Sigurd here, the German driver really trying to find a way through in that BMW, but not able to this time as they all make their way through 5 and 6 right now, as I'm hearing that Emmons has had another incident. He's had a crash, and we will take a look at that very shortly as they all make their way now towards McPhillamy here. And no real overtakes possible at this point in the race. It's a case of just settling down and getting those tyres up to temperature over the mountain and making sure you do so in a characteristic order, which is going to be befitting for the car. You want the car in prime condition as you go into this stint, as we are hearing that a little bit of a lock up there. I think that was from Wyborn just getting a lock up on the front brakes of Lamborghini going into the dipper, and you can see the traffic jam that's starting to form behind him as he makes his way to Forest Elbow here, and those tyres just not in the temperature zone. But again, a good run through Forest Elbow, that a really nice run, and indeed I think that's going to cause everyone just to fall back a little bit. As we see Baker versus Sykes right now as they charge down towards the chase here, but it's not close enough. But I can tell you one driver who is looking to go for the move here, he's all over the back of Wyborn. It's the Ferrari driver of Andreasen as he goes to the inside for 21. Of 20, and Valmini's on the outside of 21 and 22 as they go down to the chase. But he's gotten the move done nice and early, has the Dane. As we look behind him, we see Sigurd versus Porter here, and he goes to the inside of the chase there, getting the move done up to P7, Porter in P8, and then behind it's Everett in P9, who's made, I think, a double move there to get himself up into P9, a 2-for-1 special. You can see that here as he comes through the... Oh, goodness me, and there's a reason for that. It's the fact that you had Debo over there in contact with Hicks, and that is what caused him to gain 2 places. Well, a little bit of opportunistic fishing there for positions, as we see Sykes, meanwhile, still in P2, but at the back of your camera shot here, as they come out of hell corner on lap number 2, we can see that Andreasen and Wyborn really pushing on, and I think that is Sigurd in the mix there, and Sigurd indeed just catching up right now, and he's going for the move versus Wyborn up into 2. He's going to have the long run here. He's also going to have the slight distant toe of Andreasen, who's trying to share the toe across both drivers as they make their way into turn 2. He's on the inside. Can Wyborn hold it to the outside? The Lamborghini will have the rotation, but he's got the move done as Sigurd, or has he, as they go into turn 3. Does Wyborn have the overlap? He doesn't, and in fact Wyborn now under a lot of attack, and Everett trying to find a way, and then Everett battling side by side with Porter into the cut-in. Oh, keep it clean, lads, and you can see Everett just getting the move done, holding on for the time being, and what a brilliant piece of driving there from Everett, as we hear that Stock has had an instant and has returned to the pits, and Wyborn getting it very wrong as he's dropping down the order now, left, right and centre, and I think that Wyborn just simply pushing a little bit too hard there, going through 5, 6, 7 and 8, and as he goes through McPhillamy, he's causing a huge concertina effect to start building into Skyline, as we see Hicks making a move, and oh goodness me, what's happened to Andreasen here? Andreasen's mate, well, not that's not Andreasen, that is another driver entirely. We will see who that was. I think that's Addy who's had an incident, but it's definitely not the Dane here, but a Ferrari going incredibly slowly over Skyline, and as a result we can see that Wyborn now up and gaining more time and positions, as we note that up ahead of them that we've now got Sigurd on the defensive versus Everett, as Everett flashing his lights here, and I think trying to make a nuisance of himself versus the German, and he gets the place indeed, and it looks though Sigurd really struggling here. Has something gone wrong with that car, because that car is in a really bad state, and you can see he's just losing time, arm over fist here, as everybody going up. Oh goodness me, no my lord, as we can see even more coming to blows here as multiple drivers, and I think everybody just being caught out of the fact that the BMW of Sigurd was just going so slowly there. My goodness, and that means that after our first 2 laps, where it's literally been drama everywhere, I cannot believe this, as Sykes has had to jump to the pit lane. He's pulled into the pit lane, you can see him there on the inside at the rear of the camera shot. It means that after 2 laps we've got Baker leading by 6.5 seconds ahead of Andreasen, then behind him a further 2.8 seconds back is Everett, followed by Wyborn, who is in a battle for P4, leading the battle for P4 with Hicks behind him, and then you've got Fletcher chasing after, then Addy at the rear of your camera shot here trying to catch up in the time being, and then it's further back. We've got Emmons in P8 here, as so many drivers had to jump to the pits. And remember, everybody does get one quick repair here, but it is the case right now that everything is going wrong for a good number of drivers, as we see Porter and Colin Martin here in P9 and P10 respectively, after having very dreary starts, making their way now onto lap number 3. And then we've got Sykes all the way down to Dory in the pits right now. Indeed, everybody just trying to find themselves some space out of the circuit, as we see Porter and Martin battling here. Martin on the inside, Porter on the outside outside, BMW versus Ferrari, and I think it was going to be Martin's corner, and I think Porter there just respectfully moving out of the way, recognising he's not in this race right now, but he can use Martin as a pace car going on to later laps, as we see here that Hicks has actually got the move done for Wyborn. Let's take a look back at how that happened. As they're making their way into turn 3, into the cut-in, effectively, and Hicks being brave here to go all the way around the outside, and that is some brave stuff from the BMW driver to park it on the outside, get the car lined up, and then just get it done. That's brilliant driving from Hicks, and that's why he's pushing for the podium right now, as we can see Wyborn versus Fletcher here, and oh goodness me, Wyborn into the warp for his elbow, and Fletcher will get the move done rather rapidly here. He started right at the back, Fletcher, but he's up to P5 already, and chasing everybody down as rapidly as he possibly can. Chasing down the leaders right now is Fletcher. He's got a 2.7 second gap to Hicks in P4. Meanwhile, further back, we've got Bland right now, who started to put pressure on Seagate. Both of these drivers, of course, having to go to the pits earlier on and have returned from the pits now back onto circuit. And they are the closest guys battling right now for P12, as we see the McLaren driver at the back of this pair making their way into the dipper right now. Only 6 minutes complete out of the hour's race. We've got a very long way to go. And I think for all our drivers, this is going to be a test of personal endurance as much as it is a test of being able to battle past drivers. As I'm hearing that Sykes has just had a major incident out in circuit, and we saw their Bland just clipping the wall. Let's take a look back at what happened to Sykes. So coming through McPhillamy, a little tap onto the... Well, that does not look to be a crash here, but going into Sky, and there it is. He's just simply come too high on the entry curve and into the wall. Oh, goodness me, Sykes is not going to be best pleased with himself about that one, but he's jumped to the pits to do some more repair work, as Bland continues to follow Seagate here and not able to find a way through in the meantime. Now, earlier on, we had that huge incident with a number of cars, and we need to take a look back at what exactly happened there, and that was the huge incident into, I believe at the time, it was coming down into a turn 21, coming down into the chase, and that was where it all exploded effectively and all the action kicked off. Let's take a look back at what happened there with a quiet moment. So this is just us seeing Will Fletcher making his way through everything here, but is there a way we can jump back a little bit further from our camera crews? Not quite, but it was definitely the case that Seagate with the wounded car seemed to catch everybody out. So we're not going to be able to take a full look back at what happened there, but it was definitely the case that Seagate getting caught out. I think that might have been Porter in the Ferrari who just clipped Seagate, but was able to carry on all the same. Well, I'm not 100% sure who got clipped there. It was definitely a Ferrari that got clipped, and now they press on all the same, as we see that Addy right now chasing after Wyborn. Wyborn having a bit of difficulty getting the car to settle down right now as he makes his way into Forest Elbow once again, and we're going to see Addy missing the entire bonnet of the car there, but fortunately for him, the engine of course is located in the rear of the car, not in the front of the car. Otherwise that would be some engine components that are quite exposed and maybe dribbling out onto the circuit. But we can see that Addy just chasing after Wyborn here, not able to get the run in towards the chase here. What the Lamborghini having the straight line speed advantage, and it's only the toe really that's enabling Addy to close out. You can see he's actually dropping little bits of time initially, and then the toe starts to equalise the straight line speed of the Lamborghini right at the end as they make their way through the chase once again, and now head down towards turn 23 to complete another lap, as we see that our race leaders have already gone to lap number 5, but it has been anything but silent so far, as Fletcher, the man possessed on circuit right now, you can see he's got that gap to Hicks down over the last 2 laps. He's dropped it down by the best part of 1.8 seconds, and that last lap a 2:05.36 for our Fletcher as he makes his way all the way towards turn 2 right now, coming up there in the Lamborghini here. He is a man possessed, the fastest man on circuit by the best part of over a second, and Fletcher is reveling in the chase right now and looking to try and find his way all the way back up to the top step. To be fair, he's got a long way to go to get to that top step, but he's got a lot of time available to him as we're only coming to the end of the first 10 minutes of this 1-hour race, as he makes his way into the cut-in here, and Hicks will be feeling this pressure as we're hearing that Addy versus Wyborn. Wyborn's had a poor run out of turn 2, and Addy's going to make it simple for himself by going around the outside into 3 before getting into the cut-in at 4. Next up on the list to take down Wyborn, it will be Emmons. Can he find a way through? We will wait and see as he makes his way up around the hill. And to give you an idea of what it's like, we rode on board with Emmons earlier as part of the reference lap. We ride on board once again here, and this is to give you a feel of what he's got to follow around the circuit right now as he makes his way through McPhillamy here, turn 10, and you can see how close it's going to get under braking as he comes down into the dipper here, and we'll stay with them very briefly, as I think it's all about to kick off between Fletcher and Hicks, and indeed it is. We're going to take a look back, and it is side by side coming out for his elbow here, and you can see that Hicks not having the best of runs. The Lamborghini will have the straight line speed, and it's going to be side by side. It's a long drag race all the way down towards the chase here. It's going to be Hicks on the inside to the outside for the chase. Meanwhile, Fletcher's going to have the outside to inside line here, and immediately Hicks deciding to tuck in behind the Lamborghini, knowing he doesn't have the straight line speed. And I think he respects the fact as well that Fletcher may be a little bit faster. Instead, he's just going to try and capitalise on the speed available to him. As I'm hearing that we've had a change for leader. Andreasen up to lead, and this is how it all happened. So coming out of Forest Elbow here, I think it is the case that at the time we can see that Baker in the Porsche had an off into the wall there. And how the heck did that happen, you ask? Well, we've got Baker here, and in fact, making his way round. He had a little bit of off there, and with the dirt on the tyres, I think then he had the off at Forest Elbow, and that's how it all came together. But Baker losing out, they getting it wrong at Forest Elbow. So Andreasen up into the lead. The Dane in the Ferrari here, making his way up into turn 2 right now. Mark Baker only a little bit further down, 1.6 seconds down, and it's Everett in P3 as they make their way up towards the corner here, up towards turn 3. I can also tell you that Emmons has briefly got past Wyborn, but Wyborn's found a way back past, and as they drag race up towards turn 2 here, you can see that Lamborghini has got such power on the straights here, and Emmons literally having to eke out every advantage into the braking zone of turn 2, but Wyborn defending to the inside and very cleverly placing that Lamborghini, but he hasn't got the momentum, so as they're side by side up into 3, it's Emmons who has the drag past, and he's up into P7 once again. I think he will now have it done unless he gets something wrong here, as we're hearing that further down right now it is Seeger who's got ahead of Debova, and Bova versus Bland. I think Bland's got the straight line speed. I think Debova's actually had a run off the circuit at turn number 1, and you can see in fact he's limping along by comparison, so he's had that mistake at turn 1 as they make their way up into turn 2 and charge into the right hander once again on lap number 6. Meanwhile, we take a look further up front, and I can tell you that Fletcher, having got past Hicks, is now hunting down Everett. That's Everett ahead of Hicks right now in the Ferrari as they make their way down onto the Conrod straight here. And once again, ahead of them you do have Baker, but and also you do have Stock between them. Stock being a lap down, of course, between Everett and Baker here, but Stock will be required to respect the blue flags, and he's going to lift out of it. And you can see Fletcher using the straight line speed in order to chase down Everett right now as they make their way into the chicane, and as they come into that braking zone, of course, you can see how Everett, they've been a bit more sensitive on the brakes and easing the brakes on by comparison with Fletcher, using a much more aggressive braking style there to really close up the distances and get as close as possible. I reckon this could be the move for P3 coming up, going into the next lap, given the fact as we come on to lap number 7, then it's going to be these two making their way into Hell Corner. Place your bets, folks. Where's Fletcher going to do it? Is he going to try and do it into turn 1 as he's putting an even faster lap of the race, a 205.252, or will he look to do it going into turn 2? He's coming out the corner. And now the drag race begins, and Everett immediately pulling to the outside here. And I think this may be essentially Everett recognising the fact that, again, Fletcher may be a little bit faster here, and instead he's going to stay on the racing line and make Fletcher overwork the car and perhaps lull himself into a mistake as they go into turn 2. I think it's going to be a simple pass for Fletcher as he nails it on the inside here, and indeed Everett dropping down to P4, but he's going to try and stay in there and perhaps use Fletcher to pull him closer to Baker, who's only the best part of 1.5 seconds up the road from the pair, as we are hearing that Emmons versus Addy. Addy having a slow run out of turn 1, and Emmons up the inside for turn number 2. Before they even get to the apex of the corner, Emmons has got it done, and Emmons climbing up the rostrum right now, moving up into P6 and rising at a rapid rate as they make their way into turn number 4, into the cutting once again. But meanwhile, we can see that Baker having had a difficult time by looks of things coming out of the run up the hill, and now as they make their way across Skyline and down into the dipper, we can see that the Porsche driver Baker under huge pressure right now from Fletcher and Everett as they all come together through the dipper here, and it's the case that Baker will dictate the pace. It's near impossible to go side by side through here, and as they come down to Forest Elbow, you can see how he's taken a tight line, Baker, to go defensive. Meanwhile, Fletcher's decided, you know what, I'm going to take the full width of the corner and go for the straight line speed approach, and now as they charge all the way down the hill here, I think it could be the case that Fletcher's going to get it done, as we see that Baker drifting a little bit onto the dirt on the far right hand side of the circuit based on our camera as the camera turns around now, and it's going to be Fletcher. He's going to be made to go to the inside outside line, which will put him on the outside for the chicane, but instead he pulls out the last minute here to go for the move and lay on the brakes, and he gets it now, does Fletcher, as we can see that Baker going deep as well, and Everett just follows through here, and Everett using that tactical nuance there which we talked about to use Fletcher to clear him a path to get himself up into P3. As we hear further back that Colin Martin versus Wyborn here, it's BMW versus Lamborghini as they come down towards the chase themselves, and we can see that Martin has already got the move done, but will Wyborn come back up the inside? He decides not to, so Colin Martin up into P8 and continuing to try and chase after the top 5 right now is the British driver as they make their way down towards turn 23 to complete a lap number 7 out of this 1 hour race. With only a quarter of the race complete so far it's Andreasen leading at the moment by 3.1 seconds over Fletcher, but Fletcher is bringing that gap down at a very rapid rate, and we can see behind it's Everett in P3, a second down and slowly falling off the back of Fletcher. Baker a further 8 tenths down on Everett, and then you've got Hicks in that 5th place in the top 5 right now, and Emmons behind. He is a long way back as Emmons. He's 14.2 seconds back. With all the fighting and incidents that have occurred in the midfield, our top 5 have been able to run away with this one quite a bit, but Emmons is definitely hunting down Hicks right now as he makes his way out of turn 2 into 3 and 4 he goes. Addy in at P7 meanwhile, doing everything he can to try and chase after Emmons, albeit a little bit slower, and then we've got Colin Martin in P8 recovering up the field. Wyborn in P9 following him through right now into the cutting, and then rounding off our top 10 is Tom Porter, who having had a very difficult start to the race of his own in the Ferrari, looking to make a recovery drive here and doing a good job so far, albeit can he get himself closer to the top 5 come the end? That will be the big question. But Hicks right now getting ever closer to the back of Baker, and it is proving to be a very, very difficult race for Hicks right now. He seems to have fallen a little bit down the order, but he's now making that recovery work, and we can see that Baker in particular, having started up the front, has had a solid race, albeit it's one of those instances, I think, where Baker is starting to succumb to the faster pace of the drivers coming up through the field behind him, what this being a reverse grid race, and you can see that as a result, Baker not offering a huge amount of fight here. He's staying to the inside into 20, so that way he's going to the outside, the natural racing line of 21, but he's looking for a potential comeback here, but he decides against it. I think just trying to run that Porsche solidly right now, knowing that he's got a sizable gap to Emmons further back, and he'll be told that by his race engineer in the ear. And I think right now the race engineer will be saying to Baker, look, if you just hold on to this P5 and don't do anything silly, Emmons has got to overhaul a 13 to 14 second gap on you, and that could be very difficult for him to do if you keep your pace consistent and use Hicks and use Everett as your pace cars. And to give you an idea, on that lap, Baker at 208.7, meanwhile Emmons, when he comes out the final corner in order to complete his current lap, whereas Baker's on that 208.7, Emmons, as he comes across the timing line here, the comparison lap will be a 207.4. So it's approximately a second a lap that Emmons is gaining on Baker, but that means it's going to take him approximately 12 to 13 laps to be in a position to attack Baker, and that is a very long time here, with each lap being worth 2 minutes of time. You can imagine if you do 2 times 12, that's 24 minutes, so we'll be looking that Emmons might be in striking distance come the final quarter of the race, but if he makes any mistakes or takes longer in the pits compared to Baker, then as a result, Baker will reassure himself of a good top 5 finish. As we look back up front, and we can see that Fletcher really coming alive right now. He's got that gap to Andreasen down so much right now. I mean, that last lap was a 205.1, even faster than his previous best, and that's the fastest lap of the race. The only driver to hit 205s in race conditions is Fletcher. The British driver is flying right now, and as they make their way down in towards Skyline and coming through into the dipper here, the question will be, can Andreasen find some magic in order to hold off the fast charging Lamborghini as they come through the corners then and down into Forest Elbow here, or will Andreasen realise, you know what, Fletcher's clearly the faster driver and I can't really fight him here, but I can use him to pull me along a little bit and build me some time down the straight? Well, we're about to find out as they make their way then down the Conrad straight for the 9th time, and as they come charging down, as we're hearing Siegert's had a major incident, we'll come back to that in a second, we can see that the charging down towards the chicane they go, and Andreasen taking to the inside of what is turn number 20, but he's moving to the outside now to swing the car in here, and as they make their way into the braking zone, will Fletcher go for the move? He's getting very close behind, but he can't find a way to put it down the inside. Andreasen proving a little bit more of a tougher cookie this time around compared to the previous passes Fletcher's made, and as a result, I think Andreasen's just going to keep Fletcher behind him a little bit longer, but will he be able to prevent the inevitable? That is the big question as they make their way out of the final corner then and head on to lap number 10. It is the case right now that Andreasen under huge pressure from Fletcher as they go into Hell's Corner, and as they flow through the corner here, you can see Fletcher gained by 1.4 seconds over Andreasen on that previous lap. He does have a natural pace advantage, but catching up to a driver is one thing, past him is another, as Andreasen goes to the inside all the way down the straight here towards turn number 2, and you can see as he moves over here to the racing line for turn 2, this is where Fletcher's looking, but he can't find it under braking here, and as a result stays behind for the time being as they make their way up the hill here, and we look back from the gearbox of Andreasen, and you can see here how the Lamborghini is going to catch up so rapidly as they make their way through turns 3 and 4, but now it tightens up so so much as they go through the... Oh, goodness me, Andreassen's into the wall. He is into the wall. That is a disaster there. And there's contact. There's Everett. He's collided as he's jumped back to the pits. The Dane having a disaster there, and the pressure getting to him as we see that Everett now up into P2 with Hicks colliding into the back of his car. Well, he's up into P2, but Everett and Hicks both colliding there as they came into that sector, not expecting to see the Ferrari turned into the wall, and a lot of drivers now having instance. That's a disaster there for Andreassen as we take a look back at what exactly happened. So coming up through the corner here, I get the feeling what is going to happen. The car is just going to over-rotate through the corner. We ride on board with the nose here, and as he goes in, he turns in, and the rear just snaps on him, and that is all she wrote for the car for the time being. So Everett up into P2 as Andreassen's had to jump to the pits to do the repair work on the car, and indeed that is going to cost him a sizable amount of time in this race. But don't forget him, if he comes back out, if they're able to get that car repaired, he will be back fighting fit for the race. But you have to imagine now for Everett up into P2, of course, with the demise of our Dane. What is he able to do, Everett, to hold off Hicks, who is getting very close? And remember, Everett really had a serious hit on his front end into the back of Andreassen's car, whereas Hicks just had a small tap by comparison, and you can see that definitely has done some damage to the car because Everett weaving a little bit there on the rear end coming loose. In fact, he's pulling to the inside here, and he's having to go into the pits as Hicks is going to jump up into P2, so the damage on Everett's car is too severe here, and Baker is promoted back up into P3. Remember what we were saying earlier about the fact that Baker, knowing that he's the slower driver out this lead pack, he doesn't need to fight them. He just needs to drive consistently, and he's doing exactly that. And Baker is on course right now for a solid P3 stroke P4 as Emmons is coming through. Emmons set a personal best right now with a 206.671 as they make their way into turn one once again. And as they go around the corner here and up the hill, you can see that ahead of him, he does have Seeger, but Seeger is a lap down by comparison. At the rear of your camera, there's Colin Martin. And remember what we said earlier on about Colin Martin chasing after drivers and loving to fight the way back up the field? Well, here he is. He's making his way up. He's in P5 right now, as we know that Everett is in the pits, and Porter is coming up to P6, albeit making his way through the left-hander right now. And again, it really is a story at this point of survival of the car mist and not trying to make any major moves. Just keeping it together and don't get it wrong is the big story, and we're seeing that time and time again as Wyborn now coming in to the pits as well for some repair work on the car, most likely here. As perhaps it's a little bit early to expect pit stops from our drivers, although we could be wrong here. We don't have a forced pit window. It should be pointed out, it is the case our drivers are allowed to pit whenever they desire, so long as they complete the pit stop in the race, and that, as a result, will mean as Everett now comes out of the pits and he's come out in P8, it'll be the case that perhaps Everett's decided to put the fuel in the car early as part of coming into the pits to repair the damage to the car in order to go racing and hunting once again, as we're getting all the chop and change in our time boards right now, with everybody completing their pit stops here. But what we can tell you is Everett in P8 is chasing after De Boven right now, and the Belgian ahead of him, of course, will not make it easy. The Porsche driver being very comfortable in that Porsche as they make their way up into the cutting once again. Now, of course, we're at 23 minutes complete as we see Andreassen is back out of the pits right now. He's coming back out in P11. He's got it all to do. Now, play Chevette, ladies and gentlemen. I think we could be looking at a return to the top 5 for Andreassen by the end of the race, depending on what he was able to do in the pits at the time. It really is for all these drivers now who've just come out of the pits a case of you can't afford to go back in there again unless you have to, because it's part of your strategy here. And that's what they'll all be thinking to themselves as we see Everett making his way there through McPhillamy and now coming over Skyline down into the run to the dipper here, and he's got De Boven ahead. He's only a second ahead is the Porsche driver here as they make their way through the dipper and head in toward Forest Elbow. And as they come down to the corner, you can see Everett really getting the legs on the Porsche going into Forest Elbow. And as they come out here, will it be a move from Everett come the end of the Conrod Straight? Well, we're going to see it very shortly. He's building up that speed right now. He's getting closer and closer as they make their way all the way down. And as we ride on board here, you're riding with the roll bar of Everett inside the car, building up that speed. You can hear the Ferrari engine really going here. He's getting closer. He's going to look for the move. He's going to pull it out onto the outside, going into the chase here. And as they come down into the chicane, he looks to the outside, De Boven to the inside. De Boven making it as difficult as possible. And in fact, Everett not able to stay fully alongside here as De Boven gives him the respectful space. But it's the case that De Boven holding on for the time being as now Everett looks to the inside into the final corner. But the Porsche says no. And as they make their way through the final corner here, he's going to have to try and do it up the mountain straight towards turn 2, I reckon, because of the fact De Boven really really knowing how to place the car as he puts it in the dead centre. And as we said earlier, he's not one to give up, is the Belgian at the front of this pair as they make their way on to lap number 12 here. And you think that Everett right now is probably thinking, oh, come on, let me go through. And Debova's saying no as they make their way down the straight here. And Debova pushing a little bit to the tight line here as we see Everett deciding to put 2 wheels off the circuit in order to get an inside line into turn 2. He wants this badly, does Everett. He wants to gain the position, and he's got it done legally, of course, keeping 2 wheels on the circuit at all times. And the Ferrari driver taking the risk there, but he's got himself up into P7 with a very difficult pass indeed. Will Debova be able to come back? That'll be the big question, of course. And with the dirt on his right-hand side tyres now for Everett, it will be the case that he's got to be sensitive to them through the left-hand corners for the time being. And you can see that already. He's had a very slow run out the cutting, and as they make their way through turn number 7 and up into the triple header of 8, 9 and 10, culminating in the Finlamy, of course, we're going to see, I think, Debova just start to fall back a little bit now as Everett gets himself back up to speed and shods the dirt off of those right-hand side tyres through the triple left-hand sequence. Now, meanwhile, up front, what I can see is our race leader, now 9.8 seconds clear of his pursuer, who is Ben Hicks. We can see that Fletcher's run away, and Hicks here making his way down the mountain straight all the way up to turn number 2, having a clean run of things as it currently stands, as I'm hearing Wyborn has had a horrific crash. So this is Wyborn here making his way down towards turn 2. That's 2 wheels on the grass step. Nothing major so far. Oh, goodness me. And he's just rode too high over the apex curb and the car into the wall there. Now, I should point out, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of theatrics and crazy things happening, what Fletcher has informed us he will be doing in the warm-down lap, should he win this one. I believe he's planning to perform the jump at the end of the Conrad Straight on the warm-down lap, so we will watch out for that. But I think everyone's going to try and avoid doing any major theatrics for the time being, as we can see that right now Debova really chasing after Everett. He's not letting the Ferrari driver go here. He's doing everything he can as they make their way through turn 23. I think Debova's losing a little bit of time lap on lap, but you can definitely see as Wyborn jumps to the pits with the damage to the car. There is the case the Porsche driver is definitely looking to use Everett as his pace car if he can't back in front, and this is great to see from the Belgian driver here. We saw all the way back at Imola 3 weeks ago how the fact that Debova really had a solid time and a solid performance at Imola, and he's bringing it back to life again as they make their way down towards turn number 2. He's one of those drivers who just does not want to give up the fighting, and we have seen that from the Porsche driver. A really solid performance here, and you have to imagine if he continues this one up, he could be following Everett all the way around here, and Everett will be sweating, no doubt, thinking to himself, what have I got to do to lose the fast charging Porsche behind me? Well, to do that, Everett, you're going to have to try and pull a bit more lap time, because definitely Bova here wants to stay behind you, and he doesn't want to let you go. As they both make their way then out of turn number 4 and up through 5, 6 and 7 they go, and they continue on their way. This is the closest battle out on circuit right now, as we are waiting for the official pit stops to come in from our leaders. But I suspect with the fact we are 28 minutes in and almost at the halfway point, those pit stops will most likely be coming in around 35 to 40 minutes. That's been the tendency for the majority of our drivers, to run a long opening stint and then pit towards the end of the race with less than half the race to go, because it gives them then a shorter stint where they can be more aggressive towards the end. But as they all charge down here to Forest Elbow, particularly the two we're focused on, we can see Debova falling back a little bit here, and in fact clipping the wall, the rear end just coming out a bit too loose there at Forest Elbow. And I think now Debova has lost the ability to stay close enough to Everett for the time being, unless Everett makes a mistake. But it's been a good run from the Belgian, and you can imagine that he'll continue to try and push on in that P8 position right now. But looking further down the order, having been involved in that instant earlier on in the race, Stock right now in P13. He's 13 seconds down Seeger, who's up the road from him, of course, in P12. And Stock just looking to bring the car home to the end of the race here, albeit that Mercedes not looking in the best of states right now, but they've done the repair work that they can to the vehicle, and they'll just have to see whether the Stock is able to bring the car home. But he was saying this was going to be a difficult race tonight, and expecting a lot of drivers to have some theatrics here with regards to how difficult the Bathurst circuit is, as he continues around right now and presses on up the hill once again on what for him is lap number 30. Oh goodness me, Stock into the wall there, coming out of turn number 5 and up into 6 and 7. Now that is a horrific moment for Stock. And you can see how it happens essentially. He's going to come up into the right-hander here of 6. The car just bounces off the curb and goes into the wall. And as a result, Stock having a disaster as he's jumped back to the pits here. And we can see, meanwhile, up front, Fletcher continuing on his way 11 seconds clear now of second place man Hicks. Hicks there with a little bit of a mangled rear wing. Well, you can see that it's just slightly flexed out of position, but albeit he's still holding on, is Hicks, as we see making his way down towards turn 23 right now to complete another lap. Baker in P3 falling away, and to give you an update on the situation regarding Baker versus Emmons, Baker in P3 right now, he does have approximately a 3.5 second gap over fourth place man Emmons, who you can see now making his way down towards the final corner here, and through it he goes. Emmons over the last couple of laps has been stripping that gap down by a sizable margin, and the trend has been approximately 1 to 1.2 seconds each time. And on that previous lap, what we can tell you is Baker set a 2:08.05, his best lap of the race so far. Meanwhile, by the comparison, we can see that with Emmons it was a 2:06.68, and that is the difference between the two of them. In fact, that time round, Baker being caught by the best part of 1.4 seconds. And actually, correction there, Baker has set a 2:07.8 earlier on in the race. But definitely, as the tyre graining window is now coming in, it is the case as Baker goes a little bit deep through turn 2. Then he won't want to do that too often because of track limits, and also the fact he won't want to hit the wall coming out of 2. Emmons definitely looking as though he's getting stronger and stronger, and Baker just starting to hit a little bit of a small cliff here in terms of performance out of the car, and also perhaps just the case that the tyres are starting away. Oh goodness me, and Baker into the wall there coming out of turn number 6. That's not going to do any good to the car now as he makes his way through 7, 8, 9 and up into McPhillamy at 10, and it is the case that Emmons closing, and that gap has come down massively now. Emmons within striking distance. I think it could be on come the run down, Conrad, as you can see that the damage to the car is a case that it's Baker. He's having to limp the car home. There is too much damage to the car as he cuts across there, and Martin's got to be ever so careful here with the wounded Porsche trying to stay out of the way, but he finds a way through, and Baker doing a very good job there of staying clear of the traffic coming through as Colin Martin continues to chase after Emmons. And Hicks now, he's only 3 seconds off of Emmons, and he is doing a splendid job of chasing after the field. This is a huge recovery effort from Martin, and if anyone can do it, Martin can, as he now chases on Emmons, who's just only 3 seconds up the road. But there for Baker, what a disaster, and it was looking so good for the Porsche driver, and it's all gone wrong as we hear fastest lap has been changed to a 2:05.0, and the man who set it, a 2:05.049, you guessed it, is Billy Fletcher as he continues around the circuit run out, and we're looking at Hicks in P2 as he comes across the line here, 13 seconds clear of Fletcher and 13 seconds clear of Emmons, albeit Emmons into the pit, so this looks to be his scheduled stop. So Emmons cutting the race into 2 today rather than going for a late pit stop here, and this could prove quite useful as we see Colin Martin jumps up into P3, and it is one of those situations now where I think on the strategy there it's going to be whether the drivers have gone deep, alternatively whether drivers who've had to pit very early on, and one example will be Everett, for example. He had to pit at the 20-minute mark due to damage on the car, whether they've taken that pit stop early, the mandatory pit stop effectively, whilst repairing the damage. But I can tell you that Emmons right now, they're servicing the car, of course, and Baker as well, making his way into the pits. And with the damaged car, this is an opportune moment for Baker to split the race in 2 by doing the repairs and also deciding to take his pit stop here and get things fixed. As Porter, Tom Porter, who we haven't seen too much of over the course of this race, it should be pointed out, is now up into P4 and continuing on his way up the order. And it does look as though for Porter right now, he's being rewarded from some consistent driving. As we see at the rear view camera shot there, that's Emmons coming out the pits in P5, so they've got the car sorted, and on top of that as well, he's just got it set. I think that was his pit stop, and Emmons coming out of the pits now after a 57-second stop, and it's going to be the case that Emmons now will be chasing after Martin and Hicks for the end of the race. Now they of course will need to react at some point by pitting themselves, but how will they react? Will they go long? Will they decide to come in immediately to react to the fact that Emmons would effectively undercut them? It'll be interesting to see as he makes his way through turn number 4 there, albeit the rear of the car just sliding a little bit as he's got to get those tyres up to temperature. If those are new tyres, or even if they're old tyres, they'll still have cooled down a little bit in the pits. But Fletcher right now, by comparison, making his way through the final corner, and this is the scale of the gap that's being opened up. You can imagine that Hicks is just going through at the chase. Meanwhile, Fletcher coming across that timeline to complete another lap, and I think Fletcher now deciding to up the ante, a 2:04.427. That's the fastest lap we've seen all evening. I believe that's faster than his pole lap for qualifying from Fletcher. Fletcher is flying, and I don't think anybody's got responsible. Hicks over 2:06.4. He's definitely the best part of 2 seconds down, but this could be an indication as we hear that Baker's had an instant that Fletcher is coming in soon. Let's see what happened to Mark Baker. So coming out of turn 2 here, having only recently pitted, he's dropped all the way down to P11 as a result of this. And as he's coming through the cutting here, does he get cut off by the corner? He does. He experiences a very similar instance to what happened to Andreessen earlier on. And Andreessen, by comparison, Mikel here making his way through turn number 9 and up into McPhillamy at turn number 10 right now. And he's in 10th place right now. He is chasing down other drivers here, but you can tell that he's definitely calmed it down. His previous lap was a 2:07.46, and compared to Addy in front of him, a 2:09.03. So it is the case the Dane is catching some of the drivers up front, but the pace here is not hugely exceptional. He's really the only driver he's fast than right now is Addy ahead of him, but otherwise everybody else in front of him doing very similar lap times right now. So we will wait and see, of course, with bated breath as to what the Dane can do, but I think it's a case of just waiting to see how the pit stops fall versus himself. And remember, he may also have to still go into the pits, given the fact he had to pit quite early on, but we will wait and find out with that bated breath. As meanwhile, further back, we can see that Baker, after that incident in P11, and definitely now Baker not feeling comfortable with the car going into this second stint. And I just think it's that one little mistake, and that's one of the things as well with Bathurst that goes through the psychology of our drivers, is the fact that once you make one mistake here, the circuit takes on a whole different presence in your mind sometimes. I can tell you, I've been there myself. I've made mistakes whilst doing very well in a race, only to then find after making one tiny mistake, every corner now feels like a nightmare. And in the mind of Baker, he has to switch that off, does Mark Baker, and just think to himself, right, I've made one mistake, I've made another mistake, I can't make it a triplet of mistakes, I've got to cool it down in my head. And if he can do that, then he'll be able to get his race back underway and potentially pick up some positions towards the end. But meanwhile, we look further up the order and we can see our P2 man right now of Hicks. And remember, Baker only a little bit early on was following this guy around. Now he's a lap down on our P2 man of Hicks as they make their way around circuit. It really is the way of Bathurst, as many of you are commenting in the Twitch chat, eyes on it, and also Soby Gred there about the fact that Bathurst is essentially the circuit where it's survival of the least accident prone. And indeed, we are looking to see what else our drivers are able to achieve right now, as we see Tom Porter still holding on to a very strong P4 right now, albeit he is 34 seconds down on Colin Martin here, and he will have a number of drivers behind him who have already pitted trying to come through the order, including Emmons, Everett, DeBova. But I think Porter will be feeling happy the fact he's been able to go this long, as we're hearing that Sigger has come into the pit lane from what was at the time P12, and he's into the pits. His quick crew are out and they're doing work on the car as we currently speak. Now, of course, the gaps have opened up a little bit here, so it's more coming onto the strategy race right now. And let's take you through the order of drivers. So our race leader, of course, is Fletcher, 17 seconds up the road from our P2 man. Fletcher has yet to pit, but we suspect that he's going to still hold on to lead once all the pit stops are done, unless something dramatic happens in the pit, such as they don't bring any tyres out to the car or they let one roll down the pit lane. Meanwhile, we've got Hicks in P2 right now, yet to pit as well, 17 seconds behind our race leader, but more importantly, 12.5 seconds ahead of Colin Martin, who's also in the BMW M4. Now, why is this important, you ask? Well, Colin Martin, who has, as we understand it, yet to pit yet, but has been doing a recovery drive, is essentially the last of the track positioners for the battle for the top 5 who've yet to pit. You've then got Porter, who's up in P4 right now, Tom Porter in the Ferrari. He's 35 seconds down on our top 3, but he's come up from the back of the field and he's yet to pit as well. So Porter, we suspect, has a pit stop still to take, and that is going to cost him a significant amount of time, as Bland is now making his way into the pits, and he's going to be pulling up very shortly. Hold on a second, we're hearing here that Everett versus DeBova here. Now, what's happened to Everett? He's had an instant here. He was looking very strong, but we can see that as a result, DeBova has now got his place back over the Ferrari driver as they make their way through the cutting and up through 5, 6. And oh, goodness me, DeBova, they're getting it very wrong as well and almost planting it in the wall there. Let's take a look. Oh my goodness, that is DeBova into the wall. There is something definitely wrong with that Porsche. It is not in a comfortable state, and he has dropped all the way down, and that is a wounded car. But let's first find out what happened to Everett. So making his way out towards turn 2 here, he had no pressure at this point. You can see DeBova in the rearview camera shot very briefly, and as he makes his way into the corner here, he puts 2 wheels on the grass, and the car spins into and he hits the rear. That's going to have damaged the engine somewhat, and that is a disaster. As DeBova there actually went into the wall, not realising that the Ferrari was across the circuit, and as a result, that's how it all played out. As we now return to the live feed here, and in DeBova with that instant into the wall and the subsequent crash as well further out. In fact, he spun at the dipper, and this is not good news for anybody as he's returned to the pits. He's got the car out the way. Well, in fact, he hasn't got the car out the way. He's just spun the car around there, and just in time as well, we had a Ferrari coming through, and DeBova having a nightmare race after what was looking to be a recovery. As Fletcher's now coming through all this, of course, and he's going to have to be wary of the fact that the car was spun there, as we hear that Addy now up into P7 with Dabova falling by the wayside, as Blander's also had an incident, and George Bland all the way down in P11. Well, that, he's got it wrong at turn number 2 there, and that is a car into the wall. Now, then the McLaren here, I reckon it's going to be a similar situation to what happened to Everett, or is it? No, in fact, he's taken a different line to Everett here. He's just carried a bit too much speed, and the rear end has said no as he's come over the central camber change, and it's gone into the wall. But meanwhile, with everything that's happening right now, excuse me, what I can tell you is that in terms of our racers then, with the fact that Dabova has just jumped to the pits, the car is too wounded, they've had to reclaim it back to the pits. Emmons is the first of our leaders who has pitted, and as a result right now, only 5 seconds off of Porter, and he's got a sizable gap to Martin and Hicks. He'll be literally trying to hunt this down as quickly as possible, Emmons. His last lap of 206.71, whereas from Hicks and Martin, their last laps were 206.9 and 8 respectively, so they're matching times right now. And then behind, Everett, despite that mistake, is pushing on as well. He has pitted, but he's got a wounded car now at the rear of the car, as we see coming into the pits from P2, it's Ben Hicks, and this is a critical stop for Hicks, because he needs to nail this pit stop to ensure he comes out ahead of Colin Martin once all is said and done the strategy, and also to make sure that P5 man Emmons does not gain an advantage on him right now, as we are waiting to see. Emmons is all the way down at Forest Elbow coming onto the Conrod straight right now, so this is a long gap, as Martin has now set his best lap of the race, a 205.573, so Colin Martin is definitely coming in soon. He is reacting by putting in the best possible laps he can, as Emmons is trying to extract, I should say, rather than excrete every advantage down the Conrod straight, staying in the slipstream briefly of George Bland, who he's lapping as he makes his way now down in towards the chase. But you can see here Hicks already coming out the pit exit here, and I think it's going to be the case for Hicks. He's going to have a nice bit of clear traffic. He's going to have no traffic at all around him. He's got a clear circuit, and he returns in P3. So a quick stop there, as we see also we have got, by the looks of things, Emmons right now in P4 with Porter coming into the pit. So Porter naturally giving up the position to Emmons, as we suspected would happen here, as he makes his way in to his pit stop, and it's going to be Emmons now who is the best part of 22 seconds down on Hicks, and then he is a further 20 seconds down on Martin. So a 40-second gap right now between Emmons and Martin. Will it be the case that Emmons is able to get close enough to Martin when all is said and done? We will find out very shortly. We're 20 minutes remaining, well 18 minutes remaining by the clock at the centre of our screen, centre top of the screen. 18 minutes to go. We've got to expect a pit stop from Colin Martin shortly, as we see now all the pit stops starting to come through to fruition. Porter still in the pit garage, and of course we'll wait to see where he comes out in relation to the rest of the field. We've got Addy right now coming across that timing line to complete another lap. He will of course jump up into P6. Porter not leaving the pits right now, still sat there, as we've got Andreasen as well coming across. The Ferrari drivers all coming through, and then we've got Baker a little bit further back. That Baker a long way back on the Conrad straight right now, so I think Porter will come out ahead of Baker, but Porter has jumped up to P8 with all the pit stops, so it's worked out for Porter, running a solid race and staying clear of any trouble. But I think he's now got some work to do if he wants to try and get any higher than P8. They're still in the pit lane, and Porter is now starting to leave the pit, so he will be coming back out for definite in P8 as he makes his way through the corner here, as we see Colin Martin coming into the pits from P2. Now this is the big question. We know Hicks will get the place off of Colin Martin, but what about Emmons? Now Emmons once again coming out for his elbow right now down onto the Conrad straight. He has got a 42-second gap to Martin, which he's got to try and overcome through the pit stop window here, or get as close as possible for the final remaining quarter of the race here. We know that Hicks already coming through the final corner to complete another lap, to complete lap number 20 and come on to lap 21 as he makes his way down right now. We see that Colin Martin is sat in his pit lane. I'm looking out my commentary box window right now, and I can tell you that Martin, they're working on the car right now, as Emmons is coming out of the chase and down towards the final corner, and we're hearing that Colin Martin has now left his pit box here and he's making his way back out into the circuit. So as a result, Emmons is not going to get it done here. Martin is making his way back out into the circuit right now, so the gap between these two, when all is said and done, with Emmons right now coming across that timing line, you're going to see that gap is going to come down the delta in the top left corner of your screen, and the gap is now 10 seconds, just under 10 seconds, and that's what Emmons has got to close down over the rest of this race. It's a 10-second gap to the podium, and the man in his way will be Colin Martin. Can Matt do it? We will wait and see. We have got only 16 minutes remaining. He's going to have to extract a huge amount of time per lap. I do not think it's feasible unless Martin takes too long to warm up the car right now. But that is all of our pit stops pretty much said and done in terms of our top 10, as we see Emmons pushing as much as he possibly can. And in terms of fastest laps, it has been the case that Martin has had the better of the two of them right now. So Martin, based on track record, would be expected to be the faster two and finish on the podium. But never say never. We know how Bathurst punishes anybody who pushes it beyond the limit. As we see Andreasen setting his fastest personal best of the race, and that is a 2:06.585. Good pace here being shown from the Dane as he is chasing down Matthew Addy ahead of him. Addy is only 4 seconds up the road there. Sorry, 3.8 seconds in fact as our timing screen updates here. But what I can tell you is that in terms of the lap delta, as we look at Addy right now, both Ferrari drivers here of course, that Addy in P6's last lap was a 2:08.47. Meanwhile for Andreasen, who we now switch to coming up into turn 2, it was a 2:06.59. So it is a gap, or a delta if you will, of almost 2 seconds. As I'm hearing, there's been a major incident for Alex Everett, who at the time was quite a way down the order. In fact, he's jumped to the pits. What has happened to our British driver? To making his way into turn 9 in before McPhillamy. He runs a little bit wide, the car hits the wall. Oh goodness me, fortunately for him it didn't fishtail all the way around, nose first into the wall. That is definitely a damaged car and he's had to return it to the pits. They've claimed that one out of the wall and they will be bringing that back in short order. But coming back to what we're saying about Andreasen, it is looking on course as though he will catch up to Addy with approximately 10 minutes of the race to go. He'll do it probably within the next 2 laps if the form continues, where Andreasen is approximately 1.5 to 1.8 seconds a lap faster than the Brit ahead of him. But we will wait to see with bated breath as he makes his way down towards Forest Elbow once again, and he is charging hard now. Is the Dane, having known that earlier on he was on course for a potential podium, to see it slip out of his fingers, and now he is going to have to try and get himself into the top 5. He's only 1 place out of the top 5 and his target is ahead of him as he charges all the way down now towards turn 20. Fletcher, meanwhile, he'll be coming up to lap Andreasen in a very short order here with a 55-second gap right now. We haven't seen Fletcher come into the pits as far as I recall, although I may be mistaken here. We are still waiting for him to come in. In fact, he has not come into the pits whatsoever yet, so he should be expecting a pit stop from our race leader at some point in the near future, unless he's planning to literally go all the way to the end and he's just fuel saving the car right now. But this is a huge drive as he makes his way into the pits. It is on call, so with 15 minutes remaining, he's just going to, well, 14 minutes remaining, he's going to come in very gradually here, and the pit crew will just very casually saunter out towards the car here. They don't need to rush, just need to take their time, because Hicks, his main competitor, is all the way back, just coming out of the dipper and towards Forest Elbow right now, and that is a huge gap which Fletcher can afford to take his time about in order not to lose that race lead. But really, closest battle out on circuit right now is that upcoming battle for P5. We're looking at the chaser, and that is Andreasen, and ahead we switch forward to Addy as he makes his way into turn 2 once again, and I think he can feel it in his rearview mirrors right now. He does have the Dane coming up behind him. He's getting closer and closer, and it's going to be very close towards the end here as they make their way into the cut-in one more time, and you can see that now Andreasen looming large in the rear view mirror as we are hearing, hold on a second, Addy and also Andreasen up another position here. What has happened? Well, Colin Martin has gone to the pits. What has happened to Colin Martin? Well, he's not at the circuit right now. In fact, has there been a disconnect or something along those lines? But he is out the races, Colin Martin. So as a result, he is out. He's retired. We're not sure what's happened there as we try to get back the cameras with the racing going on. But what I can tell you is that Fletcher is still in the pits and he's just making his way out now. And as a result, our race leader is Hicks. Hicks has taken the lead. This is incredible, and this is a complete surprise. And as a result now, Hicks in the BMW is going to try and run this one in. You can see just briefly coming out the pits was Fletcher there. The gap between these two is 12.3 seconds, but we know that Fletcher is the best part of approximately 2 seconds a lap faster than the rest of the field when they set their fastest laps here, albeit 1.5 seconds in the case of Hicks versus Fletcher. Could we see an upset here? Could we see Hicks take the win? This is huge. And meanwhile, further back, Emmons in P3, of course. What with the retirement of Colin Martin? He's up into that podium position, and then Andreasen, he's, oh no, and Andreasen, just as we're about to take a look at him, we've cursed him as he made his way through the chase and just came in too high. Let's find out what happened. He was getting ever closer to the back of Addy in front of him, and as he comes down into the first part of the chicane here, you can just see he slides the rear end. It just comes around too quickly on him, but fortunately for him, he didn't put it in the wall, and he's still got it together, and he's still, most importantly, he's got enough time to chase that gap down. He's got 11 minutes, and the gap is 8.2 seconds, and we know how fast he can be, so he can close this gap down right now, as we only, to give you an idea, folks, we have only got remaining out of our original 16 races. This is how high the retirement rate has been. We've only got 9 drivers left. And to go through that order, we've got Ben Hicks leading right now over Fletcher, who's already brought that gap down by the best part of a second this lap so far. Fletcher in P2, having pitted recently and having had a very long stop, and I suspect perhaps has to put fuel in the car. Perhaps he was running the car very light, and that's how he's had such a pace advantage. It'd be good to know that after the race. And then we've got Emmons in P3, who's chasing after our top two right now. We've then got Addy in P4, who's 47 seconds down, and really the best of the rest outside of the podium. But Andreasen already getting that gap down to 7.4 seconds. He's already stripped almost a second off of Addy, and he's not even got to the halfway point of that. He wants this, does the Dane. Well, to do it, he just needs to hold it together a little bit more, and he can do it with 10 minutes to go. And then it's Porter in P6, 22 seconds down on our top five, followed by Baker, who's seen his fortunes go from great to disastrous to nightmare to favourable, as he's in P7 right now, just keeping his head together. As Colin Martin, well, he did jump back to the pits. In fact, he's getting the car back out on circuit. So whatever's happened to Colin Martin, it was a jump back to the pits, and he's come back out in P9. Well, he's come back out in P8 actually, with Seeger down in P9, and we can see him there just making his way out the final corner here. So we've actually still got 10 drivers running right now. That's to quote that there, we have got 10 drivers running. We can see that Colin Martin down in P8, and then Seeger, the German driver, here in P9, and then it is Bland, the last of our running drivers, in P10, with all said and done. And it could also be the case, we're hearing there that might have been the case of some speeding in the pit lane, but we left a speculation with regards to Fletcher as to why he's dropped so far down. But right now, with 9 minutes to go, this is looking to be in control of Hicks. He can afford to lose 2 seconds a lap right now and still bring this home almost there and said and done, albeit perhaps he'll want that to be more 1 second rather than 2 seconds a lap, but you get the picture. He does have some time to play with, as we see that our P10 man of Bland moving immediately out of the way of Fletcher, and Fletcher will be screaming for blue flags right now as he chases down the race leader. Meanwhile, Andreasen, by comparison, making his way along the straight once again as they come down towards turn number 2, and you can see that gap between himself and Addy now coming down to 6.8 seconds on that previous lap, a 206.6 for Andreasen. Meanwhile, for Addy, a 207.8. It's come down by 1.2 seconds. He needs a bit more in order to bring it down enough. He needs to strip out 1.5 seconds a lap to be within attack distance going into the final lap. We will wait and see. We'll continue to keep you updated on this one. But meanwhile, looking further back, we can see that Porter just running in a very silent P6 right now. We saw Baker there just coming out of Hell Corner, and you can see him once again at the rear of your camera shot as they make their way up into turn 2. Baker will be just at the very back there, as we see that Hicks setting his personal best of the race, a 205.956, and doing a very good job of keeping it together as Bland is going into the pit lane once again. He's pitting from P10, and Addy, hold on a second, what has happened to Matthew Addy? This is a disaster over Skyline, and as he tries to get the car recovered here, well, that's going to be P5, and he's going to drop all the way down the order. That's Andreasen. He's actually gained the position as a result. So Andreasen goes up as Addy makes a mistake. Here it is as he comes through McPhillamy. The car bounces up onto the exit curb, and the rear end's completely gone, and he's not recovering that car as it decides to do a 1080 pirouette. Well, that is some style points right there for Addy, but unfortunately that has cost him the position, but not the car, fortunately, and he's still able to drive on, albeit with a very heavily wounded car, as now Mikael Andreasen up into P4 and continues to press on, and now he just needs to keep it together, does the Danish driver, as he comes down towards turn 21, and if he can do so and not make any more mistakes, he'll be bringing the car home, not on the podium, which I think is where he was hoping to finish, but still in a solid P4. Can he do it? We will wait and see, of course. Not long to go in this race in order to get it home. I mean, I can tell you in the battle for P8 right now, we're looking at our P9 man of Sigger, the German driver. He is 3.7 seconds down on Colin Martin, and these two have been trading lap times, but the gap's not coming down too rapidly. It's coming down by a couple of attempts a lap as it currently stands. Perhaps he might be able to attack if Martin makes a mistake towards the end of the race, although I doubt it. We will wait and see. Of course, anything can happen here until that checkered flag is waved. And indeed, we are seeing that Seeger is closing the gap on Martin right now at a rather dramatic rate, albeit going over Skyline there. It's opened up by 2 attempts. And Martin, by comparison here, making his way into Forest Elbow right now, and these are where the two drivers are out on the circuit as he makes his way through the corner and charges down the Conrad straight. Once again, the Jägermeister Mobile chasing after the Next Gen Racing Mobile, as they're both BMW M4 machines, of course, run by different teams here, and indeed both drivers having very different approaches to driving the same car, as he pushes his way all the way down Conrad now and comes down towards the final couple of corners. But meanwhile, up front, I can tell you that Hicks is still leading by a gap of 7.5 seconds. as he goes onto lap 26. Hicks, you can see they're just trying to do everything he can to keep the car together right now as Fletcher comes through Hell Corner and is looming large and getting ever closer. You can see the Lamborghini is really hunting down right now. The Bull is charging with its horns and trying to chase down the BMW right now. German efficiency versus the Lamborghini's aggression here as he makes his way up towards turn 2, does Fletcher, and you have to feel for Fletcher right now. You probably thought it was a certain win here, only to see that he's got to chase it down towards the end with 5 minutes to go. Of course, Fletcher being the favourite here, but everybody does love an underdog story of Hicks, what at least some viewers out there I think will be doing, as we look at our Twitch chat and see a lot of people cheering on Hicks to try and bring it home as well. And meanwhile, Evans just making his way around in P3 right now with just 5 minutes remaining on the clock. They are going to be getting in at least 2 more laps after this one, as we can see that Evans is doing everything he can in order just to keep it consistent right now. He has not really got a gap to chase down versus Fletcher, given that Fletcher is opening up that 16-second gap even further, and he's got a 55-second gap to Andreasen, so it is all about nursing the car home right now. As we see Andreasen coming across that timeline to go on to a lap number 26 here. And with those 5 minutes remaining, let's give you a quick recap of the stories of each of our drivers. Hicks, having started towards the back alongside Fletcher, find himself making his way up through the field in a very rapid order, avoiding the instance between drivers, keeping it together in the BMW, and now find himself in the lead with a second as Fletcher had an incident. We're hit. Look at the gap. It's come up to 16 seconds. Here's what's happened. So going through McPhillamy, our P2 man's just rode a little bit high on the curve there, but nothing serious. Then into Skyline as the car come loose. It has he's twitched and received some snap oversteer, and it's gone into the wall. My goodness, that's a cruncher on the front end. But fortunately, the engine is in the back, so Fletcher's not taking any engine damage, but there will be major suspension rod damage on the front of the car. Fletcher just pushing it to the absolute limit, and finally, it would seem finding his limit. We're wondering how hard Fletcher could push. Well, there you can see Fletcher going above and beyond the capacity of the car there, at least at Bathurst, and he's having to come into the pits with all the damage as well. And as he enters the pit lane here, we're going to be seeing him drop down the order, and Emmons, who's coming out to the final corner right now, it's going to be the case that Emmons jumps up into P2 as a result of this, and Hicks is going to be allowed to run away with a win, assuming there's no more mistakes from any of our drivers in the top group. Of course, I don't want to put the curse on them. Well, you can see with Fletcher coming into the pits right now, Emmons up into P2, and then the big question will be whether the Ferrari of Andreasen will be coming home in P3 or P4. Fletcher, of course, in the pits. I think this will be the first time he's coming to repair the damage on the car, so he'll be doing some quick repair. I think the mechanics will have some coffee in their veins right now. But will Andreasen be jumping back up into P3, or will it be the case he comes home in P4? We'll have to wait and find out right now. And meanwhile, we can see that Addy in P5 chasing after Andreasen, but not catching up. In fact, just dropping back little by little right now. The gap between these two expanding to 11 seconds. And I think Addy would just be very happy with a top 5 finish, given the attrition rate on the cars here. As we can see, meanwhile, it's P2 man Evans making his way through the cutting. And meanwhile, Fletcher starting to leave the pits here. Where's Andreasen on the circuit, you ask? He's coming out of the final corner to go on to another lap. I think Fletcher is just going to come out ahead of the Dane as he makes his way out the pit lane. Fletcher there, and then Andreasen just coming out behind him, so he wasn't able to get ahead. And unless Fletcher does not get things switched on in time with approximately 2 laps remaining, I think Andreasen's going to be having to settle for 4th in the end. He's got a 3.5 second gap to close up, but we know when Fletcher gets the car running, he will be go, 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 and he will not be worried about the Dane chasing him, because he will have the pace to break away. But we'll wait and see, of course, because it's going to take a little bit of time before Fletcher is fully up to speed. But I think he's already starting to eke that gap out. He's already opened up, a temp in sector 2, and then not even completed the full sector yet. As we can see, Andreasen is just dropping a little bit further back right now. But as we were about to say, Hicks having a solid race right now. As we can see, the checkered flag is starting to be waved for our drive. So that's the white flag there. So we are on to the final lap here, and Hicks is going to take us around for one last tour of the circuit. We are going to do 28 laps in the end. It has been a phenomenal drive from Hicks. And then Emmons in P2. Well, this will be a surprise for it to be on the second step if everything goes his way and continues to go his way. And how the mighty have fallen in the feature race. Fletcher will have a lot to take away from this one. That's no discredit to his driving ability, of course, but everybody does have those races which don't go their way, and Fletcher today just finding it in the feature race. Bathurst has caught him out, but plenty of positives to take and plenty of things to learn from going into the season next week. Andreasen, meanwhile, is going to be a difficult one to stomach a little bit, given the fact of how it played out and how that one mistake cost him the chance to be on the podium. But to come all the way up to P4 after all is said and done is a huge effort for the Dane, and one that he'll roll forward with into next week at the start of the season. And it's the same with Addy. It's been a very difficult race, but a top 5 finish in the end, a P5 finish. Should he make the line right now, I think he'll be very pleased with. And Porter, look at Porter here. Tom Porter keeping it in P6 right now. He's been a very silent one over the course of this race, just running long in his stint and making sure to keep the car together and stay out of trouble, and it's worked wonders. Meanwhile, Baker, having had that very positive start, only to see a couple of mistakes, see it all fall apart. And I think Baker has got a lot to take back to the drawing board today, as has Colin Martin with everything that's happened, albeit that unexpected jump back to the pits for Colin Martin. And Jochen Seeger, of course, having a very difficult race, and one where I think Bathurst just has not been his place. And indeed, he'll be looking to improve over the course of the season, indeed, perhaps some more favourable circuits. But meanwhile, we can see as he makes his way down to the chase then to complete the chicane for the final time. Only one more corner remains for Hicks. He's had a solid performance this one, and perhaps it's an unexpected win, but regardless, Ben Hicks will take the final corner, and as he emerges, he will win the feature race of the final test event in the pre-season for the GT3 Championship. Hicks takes the win in the feature race, and it will be one to remember for Hicks, as meanwhile making his way through the chicane right now and coming down to the final corner. Emmons, having recovered from what was a very difficult start in the race, he will come home in the end, 22 seconds down our race winner, but he won't mind because it's a P2 for Emmons, the British driver, crossing the line there. Matt Emmons, congratulations to him. And Fletcher, meanwhile, is a sizable way back as we hear Colin Martin has come across the line along with Seegert here, but it has been a day to perhaps think about in terms of the feature race, as he's going to come charging down towards the finish line. He's on the Conrad straight right now, he's got a way to go, but the Lamborghini gets one last roar down the long straight here, indeed looking very strong. And I think for Fletcher right now, if he can keep up the performances that we've seen of him in the 2 test race events so far, last week and also this week, it's going to be a case of who can beat Fletcher. Well, if he doesn't beat himself or doesn't have a strategic mistake, then it will be Fletcher who's going to be the favourite. As he makes his way then into the final corner, he will bring it home in P3. Across the line comes Billy Fletcher, a good effort all things considered, as he crosses the line and takes the checkered flag. And then in P4, having recovered after a disastrous middle point of the race, is Andreasen. Mikkel Andreasen from Denmark brings it home in the Ferrari in P4, and Matthew Addy here will follow suit, the other Ferrari driver in the top 5 here, as he comes into the final corner, does the Brit. A great effort for Matthew Addy. He crosses the line in P5, and he'll have a smile across his face here, flashing his lights in joy. He crosses the line to take the top 5 position there. And then Porter, what a solid race from the British driver here. The number 86 car being unsung in terms of praises, but it'll get its praises right now as Porter brings it across the line in P6. A brilliant effort there. He crosses the finish line, and then the last of our drives to come across here to complete the 28th lap on the lead lap, it will be Baker, who crosses the line in P7. A difficult one for Baker, but plenty to take away from it. But that is our finishing order. Colin Martin having come home in P8, a lap down, and the same with Seegert just behind him. But congratulations to all of our drivers, as I believe we are going to have Fletcher do the attempt at trying to send the car over the barrier at what is the chase here. He'll be doing it very shortly, so we will look out for that. He did say he would try it. I think he's even still going to try it, even though he didn't pick up the win. As we hear that Hicks has jumped back into the pits. And in fact, Emmons now, I think, has tried to make it. Oh my goodness Lord. They are having a little bit of a laugh here. A bit of a pre-season laugh to the end. But we're going to see Fletcher try and do it now. He's going to try and jump over the board here. He goes charging down towards the chase here. And will it be the case that he's able to clear it? Will he be able to horse his way over it? He goes for the straight line. And as he comes down, of course, it's snaking. And he looks at the run over and he makes it. And does he keep it together? He does put it in the wall. But all of our drivers now cooling down. Of course, that won't be permitted in the actual season. Our drivers having their last little laughs there, of course, as we see Andreas and Addy there just running alongside one another down the Conrod, and I think just saying to one another their good race, just signalling in their windows. And indeed, it was a great battle between these two for P4 throughout, but in the end it was Andreasen who took home the P4 as Addy goes charging down. Will he also try to horse vault his way over the barrier? He is going to try it, so he's going to try and get the Ferrari across here as it snakes across the gravel and it hits the wall instead. But it will be Andreasen here who just brings the car home very carefully, very precisely. He's going to peacefully take it through whilst Addy brings home an absolutely crippled Ferrari by comparison. The SAS machine here coming down towards the pit lane right now. He's going to bring it in there. A brilliant effort. And Addy, despite crumpling the car, I think the mechanics will laugh that one off. Albeit I think the Ferrari bosses will not be because of the money that they'll have to spend repairing the car. And then bringing it home into the pit lane right now on his cool down lap will be Baker. He comes charging down right now, does Baker, as he makes his way all the way down the straight here. And as he comes down, he's not going to go for the horse vault. Instead, he is deciding to come down to the chase naturally. It's good to see from Baker here, bringing that car home. A lovely livery, of course, on the Porsche, bringing back those classic colours. And as he makes his way into the pits, that will conclude our racing for tonight. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching, and that is the conclusion of our pre-season test race events for the Next Gen Racing GT3 Championship Season 2, which is going to be hosted using iRacing. That means as of next week, we will be getting underway with the official season, and we've got plenty of racing action ahead. And if you want to know more about the Next Gen Racing community in the meantime, why not check out our official racing website at nextgenracing.co.uk or our Facebook group at Next Gen Racing in the groups. And we can also just quickly say a big thank you to our partners once again, Apex Racing Academy. Check them out at apexracingac.com, and Next Level Racing, of course, our other big partner for these events. nextlevelracing.com if you want to find out more about how you can spruce up your sim racing equipment to be the very best. And Apex Racing Academy, of course, to train with the best, to be the best. But until next week when we get the season under the way, it's going to be goodbye from me. I have been your host, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit. And until next week, stay safe, stay well, stay positive. But most importantly, remember to stay on track. Thank you for watching and good night.